Throughout history, freethinkers have outraged the religious with their wacky ideas about the virtues of free speech, reason, and, of course, eating babies. Now, God is dying, and it's time to dispose of his remains. From the pits of hell, Satan sends two puppets of the imperialist West and the Zionist Jews against God, Islam, and tiny kittens to bring you their propaganda and conspire for a new world order. This is Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment with Ali Rizvi and Armin Navabi.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment. My name is Ali Rizvi, and with me is the Iranian atheist rock star, Armin Navabi.
Okay.
Armin.
Hi.
Hi, how are you? How are you doing today?
Stop asking me that. Next.
I'm watching, I'm actually looking at you. For those of you who are listening to this on audio and you can't see, he's got a little bit of stubble and it looks good. I like it. Yeah.
I hate small talk. I hate it when people ask me, how are you? I just don't know what to answer every time. But go on.
No small talk this time. No small talk.
Okay.
So, how's the weather up in Vancouver?
Oh, fuck you.
Okay, all right, fine. So here's what we're doing today. So today we have actually, I'm just fascinated by this, and this is going to be, I think, really, really interesting. We will be talking with Nik J. Gray. So Nik J. Gray is someone who Armin met at the recent ex-Muslim conference in Australia. And he came back completely raving about her. Apparently, she did a talk that totally blew everybody away. She has a very, very fascinating story. She is the daughter of a Sunni Muslim convert, so someone who actually converted to Sunni Islam. And it was a very conservative form of Sunni Islam. And Nik was raised in a very pro-jihadist, a very anti-West household. She even briefly lived in Somalia, and she grew up and she wore a niqab and a hijab. Today, she has left the adopted religion of her mother, and she speaks out pretty openly and pretty unabashedly, as you'll see, as a free-thinking ex-Muslim. And tonight, she's joining us to just talk about her incredible story, all of her insights. Nik, welcome to the podcast. It's really, really good to speak to you.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah,
the weather in Australia is great today, by the way. You didn't ask that, but it's great weather today in Australia.
In Australia, it must be. Yeah, rub it in. So, we're in Canada, she's in Australia, and it's good. We'll have this conversation again in June. And I'll see how it is. Actually, it'll probably be pretty good there then, too. Yeah, I know.
By the way, this is one of those episodes that I wish that we had like 4 hours or something, because there's so many things I want to talk to you about that I know we're not going to be able to, but we're going to try our best.
Yeah, so it's because since Armin said that, he's going to hate my first question to you. So I was recently on a show, the People Versus, with Josh Zepps. It's a great guy. He's also in Australia. He does this show. And I was on with 3 other guests, and he asked us as a sound check thing what we had for breakfast. And all 3 of them said Vegemite. And I don't know what that is. So can you explain to us what Vegemite is, just to start?
Vegemite's just basically yeast extract. It's like concentrated into it's like black goo. That's all it is.
Okay, so it's apparently a very common breakfast, especially on the people on that show. So it was weird. Anyway, so now on to less important things, of course. Yeah, can you start? How did this happen? So your mother was a convert to Sunni Islam, so you were born into the religion.
In a sense. So my mum converted to Islam when I was about 2 years old. So I guess in a sense, if you want to talk about the Islamic sense, I was technically a born Muslim and I hadn't reached puberty. So I was technically a Muslim all the way up until I left home and left Islam.
How old were you when you left? Oh, wait, did it happen at the same time? Left home and left Islam happen at the same time?
No, I left Islam but was closeted when I was about 15, as that's when I was like, God's not real. And then at 19 is when I left home.
Wow, you're smarter than you. Beat me by 1 year. You're smarter than me.
Yeah.
I know.
So when you were in Islam and when you were being raised, your mother and your family, how conservative were they? So you said that they're pro-jihadists and very anti-West. So can you kind of just describe that? What kind of atmosphere were you in growing up? Because that's certainly a lot more hardcore than what Armin and I grew up in.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I always like to joke that I escaped Sharia in the suburbs of Australia. So to give you an idea, my mum's favourite scholar is Anwar Awlaki. So
Okay.
I grew up with him in my house, constantly playing Sheikh Faisal, the Jamaican one from UK, Abu Ayman from the UK. Like, so those are the kind of people that I grew up with in the house.
Yeah,
like,
and
I listened to.
Yeah, just for the audience, I just have to say this really quickly, that Anwar al-Awlaki, who people don't know, is the American-born, he's from Nebraska, the American-born jihadist, extraordinaire. I mean, he lived in Yemen. He was the inspiration behind the Boston Marathon bombers. He was the inspiration behind a lot of the recent attacks. A lot of ISIS fighters were very, very inspired by him. So, and he was actually killed in a drone attack. The U.S. actually ended up killing him.
I mean,
but
I don't know. I don't even know how it's like to be in a family that has a favorite Islamic scholar to begin with, let alone if their favorite scholar is some jihadi shit like that. So,
well, I mean, they're one of the jihadist leaders and inspirations. So you grew up with this Anwar al-Awlaki influence.
Yeah.
And what was it like? What were the kinds of things that he was saying that were resonating with your mother and your family?
The standard, like, if we go through our checklist, the West is evil, the West hates Muslims, death to the infidels, death to the kuffar, just the typical stuff that you would get in any jihadi sheikh lectures. So that's who my family like to predominantly listen to. The way he speaks, because he's very charismatic, or he was, because he's dead now, but he was a very charismatic man. The way he spoke, and it was like very kind of that inspiring way of speaking. Like he'd never get too aggressive, so it would attract a lot of people to listen to him. And he would be on constant loop, and if he wasn't on a constant loop playing in the house, it was Surah Al-Baqarah playing every single day in the house.
Wait, how old were you when 9/11 happened then?
You
were still in that?
7 or 8, maybe.
Do you know what your family's reaction was like to that?
Yes, so I actually remember for us in Australia, obviously we found it in the morning, and I was living in a kind of a rural area of Brisbane at that time. And I remember I came down the stairs and the news was on, and my mum was like, "You're not going to school today." And I was like, "Okay, why?" And she's like, "Look at the TV." And I was like, "Oh, okay, there's a building on fire. What do you want me to do about it?" And she's like, "No, you can't go to school. Muslims are going to get attacked for this." Like, she knew straight away. She was like, she knew. It was like, and she's like, "You're not going to go." Very quickly, my family were, it's a conspiracy. It's the Jews who did it. It's this, it's that. And the community that we were in were very involved in that. And then when the Afghan war began, my mum was very in line with supporting the Mujahideen and the Taliban and Al-Qaeda and all that sort of stuff there, because who she'd been taught Islam and who she looked up to was a woman who had been initially in Afghanistan with Osama bin Laden against the Soviets. So the convert group in Australia is very small, so they all kind of like are incestuous with each other in their Islamic knowledge and learning. So, yeah, I was pretty much being told that it was justified because the West kills Muslims all the time.
So first it was the Jews, but then they realized that no, it was Al-Qaeda, but they said it was justified.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah, this was a confusion I think that a lot of people had. I saw this a lot too, because they were first in denial. They're like, no, this wasn't Muslims who did it. This was the Jews who did 9/11. But at the same time, they would talk about how it was justified. So I'm like, now you're praising a Jewish action. And it was, people were very, very confused about it.
So basically, if you think it's bad, then the Jews did it. But if you think it's okay, then yes, we did it and we take credit for it.
Pretty much.
Okay. All right.
So, and how did you feel about it when you saw it? I know you were young, but I mean, did you have any kind of impressions, or did you just kind of go along with what your family was saying?
But I was young, so I never turned around and was all pro-jihadi myself. Whereas my brother would run through the streets of Melbourne going, "Allahu Akbar, Takbir," and I'll be like, can you shut up?
You had older brother or
I'm the oldest, so it was my younger brother.
How old were you at this point?
When my brother was running through the streets screaming Takbir Allahu Akbar?
Yeah.
Like 14.
Okay.
But so I've never, the thing is with me, when it comes to growing up, I never had like this deep connection with Allah or Islam. Like I was kind of indifferent to there being a God. I was just like, I should practice because this is all I've known. Like this is Islam that I know. Right. Granted, it was a very authentic, I don't like to use the word extreme, version of Islam.
Oh, thank you so much for doing that.
Yes. I can't stand the word extreme. Like, it's not extremism, it's just piety. That's
it's authentic Islam. Okay, I'm going to use the same terminology from now on that you're using. Right. Authentic Islam. Yeah. Okay, go on.
Yeah. So that's what I knew. So I'm like, this is what I'm going to practice and follow. And so, you know, we're going to school and seeing all that. Like our local mosque was firebombed and then it was burnt down, and it kind of added to that fuel of the circle of like my parents' like community of them being very anti-Australia, anti-West, anti-government, anti-democracy. That's when they first started talking about making hijrah or migration to a Muslim country. Now, to give some context, my mum is a niqabi. She still is a niqabi. And she wore the niqab pretty much 6 months after she became Muslim. She's like the full like head to toe black gloves. The only thing you could see are her eyes, and sometimes she'd even cover those. And so I experienced the side of, I guess you would call it bigotry, where obviously being told to go blow myself up, I've been told to go back to my own country and all that sort of stuff. So that added more fuel to the fire. And I couldn't understand it because I'm a child. I don't understand why someone's attacking my mom. So I'll get defensive over the fact that it was my mum, but not get defensive over the fact that they were attacking Islam.
So the kind of anti-Muslim sentiment, were these also the people who burned down the mosque?
Well, probably. I lived in like Bougainville, so...
Right. So you were being defensive over people attacking your mom, not necessarily defensive over being people attacking your religion.
Exactly. So it's still my stance that I even carry to this day. Like if I'm at a train station and I see a Muslim woman being abused simply because she's wearing a hijab, I'm going to defend her as a human being, not defend her religion. Okay.
Yeah. I think that's kind of an interesting phenomenon. I think we've talked about it here before as well, that there is that there are actually hijabi people that I know who they don't love the hijab. They're actually constantly arguing with their parents. They want to take it off. So they have an ideological problem with the hijab. But when it comes to the identity aspect, they're defensive of the identity. These are my people. Like, don't attack my family, my parents, my friends, and all this stuff. So there's like this sort of conflict where they don't like the hijab as an ideology, but they do adorn it they don it as a way, as a symbol of identity.
Yeah. Ideas, people, we've been through that.
No, but I mean that's what you're talking about, right? Like you were on the receiving end of some anti-Muslim stuff, but you still had a huge problem with Islam.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Okay, but we've been discussing that forever. But what I'm interested in, how?
No, but it's still clear to a lot of people.
Okay, Okay. But it's not clear to a lot of people. But how did you? What happened? What happened in your journey? Like, how did you become an atheist? Like, at what point did you realize that Islam is not for you? Like, take us through that.
Yeah. Okay. So growing up, I was all about, fairness and justice. I think perhaps it can be kind of like a childish concept as well of like, it's not fair. So I remember one particular moment was always standing out in mind was I could never understand why, my lovely neighbor who's not Muslim is going to burn in hell for all eternity, but the imam who beats his wife and cheats on her, he's going to go to Jannah because at the end of the day, he might go to Jahannam because he's sinned a little bit, but eventually he's going to go to Jannah because he was a Muslim and he believed in Allah. Right. And so that sort of stuff started sitting in my head, and I was like, this doesn't make sense. I don't kind of agree with it. And just all these small points. And so probably one of the biggest failings my parents ever did was encourage me to ask why. I would ask why. I'm like, why do I have to wear a hijab and my brothers don't have to wear a hijab? Why can't I raise my voice when I'm in the house if there's men in the house, but my brother can raise his if there's women in the house? And just all these kind of things where it's, I was being told on one hand that, Islam gave women rights before everyone else. And then on the other hand, it was like, okay, and Islam's all about equality. Well, where's the equality? And, just sort of all this sort of questioning. And I kind of resolved myself to live, like, I knew I didn't believe in anything. Like, I was probably the worst person when it came to praying. I'd pray, but, like, if I could get out of it, I'd be like, yay, I don't have to pray. Or I'd, like, just take a really long time in the bathroom so that my parents would get over the salah. And then I would be like, okay, I'll go pray by myself in the room. And, like, I wouldn't do it. And then I kind of kept up the image of a good Muslimah, and it wasn't until I was about 15 years old, which is when my sister passed away in an accident. And I remember I was there with her because I found her, and I was like, hang on, like, this is a child. This child has done nothing wrong, like absolutely nothing. Yet Allah has taken her away. And, of course, in Islam, we can't question why Allah does things. And I couldn't wrap that around my head, why he will take a 2-year-old, but he won't take murderers, he won't take rapists, he won't take pedophiles, he won't take all these people who do deserve to die, in a sense. Why would he be taking this child? And I remember I was, I've said this many times, so I'm not going to cry this time. I remember I was, like, holding her, as I was doing CPR, and I remember this thought just came into my head as my mum came into the room, and she was screaming. She was like, "Ya Allah, Ya Allah." And I was looking at her, I'm like, he's not going to help. Like, CPR is going to help. Like, science is going to help. And then I kind of was just like, no, there can't be a God, because this doesn't even make sense to me. Like, how can this be possible? And that's pretty much where I was like, nah, there can't be. There's no God. There's no such thing as a God. But then I didn't really know much. So I didn't know who Christopher Hitchens was. I didn't know who Richard Dawkins was. I just didn't even know what I was. I just kind of was like, I don't believe, but I'm going to pretend I do so I don't get in trouble.
So you didn't know any other atheists? Did you know any other? No. You were the only atheist I
didn't even know what an atheist was. Granted, I grew up under a rock, but I didn't know what an atheist was.
So
I didn't know what atheist was.
Yeah.
You realize this is bullshit all by yourself?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's amazing.
Yeah, this is no, it's a powerful thing, because I'll mention this because I actually had a similar kind of experience. First of all, that sounds absolutely devastating that you had to go through that. I was 5 years old, and my cousin was 3 at the time, and she had leukemia, childhood leukemia, which is now curable, but at that time it wasn't. This is around 1980, and then when I watched her die of cancer, it wasn't like a quick painless thing. It was actually prolonged breathing, gasping torture. I remember when I was 5 years old, I did not know what a skeptic was. I didn't know what doubt was. I didn't know what critical thinking or any of that stuff was, but that is a day that I became a skeptic. So yeah, I think these things are...
Growing up, like, you're taught, like, if you have any doubts in your heads, it's waswas from shaitan, like, it's whispers from you, yeah? But when I reached that point, I was like, nah, like, if God's not real, shaitan's not real, this is bullshit. So I'm just gonna do my own thing.
Did you ask him? So you basically by yourself came through the unfairness of hell, but also the argument of evil. Did you ask about the fair? Because it's very interesting, because hell was the first thing that also made me start thinking that this doesn't seem fair, and started that was the first seed of doubt for me. And it seems like it was for you. And it seems also, when I try to introduce a seed of doubt among Muslims and also Christians, it seems that's the most powerful one, because it's very, most people are not very smart, but most people understand kindness, even if they're not smart. So they could see that if you point out how unfair this is, most people with no philosophical background, very limited understanding of logical fallacies, could see that, this doesn't seem fair, right, for people to burn in hell just because they're not Muslim. So, but did you ask anybody?
Well, I remember going to, like, my dad, my stepdad, and I remember asking him, because you know how it says in like the Sirah and like the Sealed Nectar and the biography of Muhammad, it's like how his grandfather, his uncle or someone, that only their ankles were going to be in a hellfire. And I was like, why?
Abu Lahab, right?
Thank you.
Yeah,
No, not Abu Lahab.
No, Abu Lahab is
Abu Jahal.
Lahab is the one that has the entire surah dedicated to him.
Yeah.
I'm talking about his
Abu
uncle.
Talib. Abu Talib.
Thank you. Yes, Abu Talib.
Ali's father. He was,
Yeah.
Wait, Abu Talib will go to hell? That's not fair.
Only his feet are going to be in hellfire.
Only his feet will be in the hellfire.
Yeah.
How does
And I
that
was
work?
like, well, that doesn't make sense. And so I was, and all these like concepts of like, like what happens in the hellfire, like, like your flesh being ripped off your body and then your muscle and your bones and living and eating, drinking and consuming pus and boiled water. And then your body gets rebuilt again. And then it happens again. And I was just like, this sounds like a terribly written like sci-fi or fantasy novel. Terrible. Like I could write better.
I just think like if you can put like a chamomile tea bag in the boiling water, then it's not so bad.
I know, right? Like seriously. So, and then talking about Jannah, and I was always like, there's just like so many things were confusing, and I would go and so like because of who my family were in the Muslim community, so we would have like international scholars would come and I'd get to meet them, and I was volunteer at some events, and so I would ask these questions. Thankfully, I'm female, so I can ask those anonymously.
Wait, why? If you're male, you couldn't ask anonymously?
Female privilege, man.
No.
So like for example, say like Yusuf Estes when he was in Melbourne like years ago, I couldn't ask a question. I had to write it down on a piece of paper and hand it to someone who would then go and read it out. Well, this is my outer, so he can't hear it. So I kind of had this thing where I could ask these sort of questions. So I would ask questions, and a lot of the time they'd be like, or the ones who would tell me to my face, they'd be like, sister, maybe you should go read the Quran some more, like you need to maybe go study this some more, go do some zikr, go do this, go do that. Like they would never give me an answer. And then if I keep pushing, because I've got a very pushy personality, I'd be like, why? They'd be like, are you questioning Allah? That's a sin in Islam. You can't question Allah. Are you better than Allah? You're his creation. And no, you just get shut down. And I would just kind of stop asking those questions, not because I feared I was sinning or anything, but because I was just like, I'm not going to get an answer. Right. And I don't want my parents to know I'm making all these questions. And so what I ended up doing when I was living at home to make my home environment a lot more tolerable is I started using Islam against my parents. So
if you can't beat them, join them.
Well, yeah, exactly. So like, for example, I've just recently discovered that Al Cultura Institute is like an international thing. I just thought it was in Australia. And so my parents told me that I should volunteer for it. So I went and I volunteered, and we had like sheikhs from like all over the world, predominantly Canadian sheikhs, coming, and they were giving lectures here. And then my, I can't remember his name, but he gave this lecture, and he was about how like, if the Muslim youth come to the masjid and they're wearing like ripped jeans and they don't look Islamic, don't bully them and don't kick them out, otherwise they're going to leave Islam. And I remember I went home to my parents and I was like to them, I should take the niqab off. And they're like, no. And I'm like, but this sheikh said that if you don't want me to leave Islam, you should let me, like, you should encourage me. Like,
was it Shabir Ali or?
I don't know his name. He was Arab. So, like, and we're talking, this is like 10 years ago almost. Like, I can't remember these things.
Okay.
But that's the sort of stuff that I would ended up doing. And then it's not until I left home at 19 where I was like, yeah, I can't do this anymore. I need to get the fuck out.
Right. Yeah. So what did you tell your parents? First of all, your stepdad, which raised you, your mom was a Muslim since you were born, but she became a Muslim because of your stepdad. Is that correct?
No.
How did she become a Muslim?
She loves to tell this story. So she was at a nightclub.
Okay.
And she met a bunch, I think they were Turkish men. And as all Muslims love to do, they love to talk about Islam. Doesn't matter what environment they're in. If you're not a Muslim, they'll talk to you about Islam. And she, at that time, was a born-again Christian. And they asked her, and then they said, oh, go ask your pastor, priest, dude, whatever, these questions. predominantly Muslims love to go after Trinity. Like, that's their favorite.
Yes.
It's the only argument they can come up with. They're like, well, can you explain Trinity? Yeah. And so she went to the...
that's how Islam was born, by the way. But go on.
Yeah. So she goes there and she was like, so she asked a couple of questions, and then obviously she wasn't getting the answers. So then, she goes and she gets back in touch with these men, and they start saying, oh, well, you should go to a mosque, and the mosque, the imam, he'll explain everything. Like, it makes so much more sense. Like, trust me, you'll go there. She ended up going to a mosque, and she spoke to an imam. This was in the Gold Coast. Spoke to an imam and became Muslim the very day and put her hijab on. Before she even met my stepdad. And
the argument is that because the Trinity didn't make sense and Islam did.
Yeah, she says, oh, well, it pointed out all these flaws and all these doubts in Christianity, and Islam just made so much sense, and Allah put this nur inside of my heart, and he just guided me to the right path. That's literally what she said.
And this was before you were born? And at this...
No, this was after I was born.
Oh, after you were born, sorry. And she was with your... biological?
No, she was separated. She was a single woman.
And then did she marry your stepdad? Is a sheikh?
Yeah, so at that time he was just a muazzin.
Muazzin is a person that sings the azan to call to prayer.
Yes,
right. Okay.
Yes. So he was a muazzin at the time, and they had an arranged marriage. They met 3 times and then they got married.
And how old were you when your mom got married?
Like 3 or 4.
3 or 4. So you grew up with the sheikh as a stepdad? Okay, wow. Much. Oh my God. All right. Go on.
How was it? So you said your mom, before she became Muslim, she was a born-again Christian. So it seemed like she was on some sort of like journey to find out what the truth was even before that. What was her background with her family and her parents?
Yeah, so
Did you ever meet them? Or?
Yeah, I have a great joke. I like to say that I'm from the United Nations of religions, or the trifecta. So my grandmother is an Irish Catholic, and my grandfather is Jewish.
All right.
My mum is Muslim. So when she became Muslim, she stopped speaking to her family because they were infidels. So she was raised as an Irish Catholic.
She didn't try to convert them or anything like that?
Oh, she did. I think my grandfather converted, but he's schizophrenic, so I don't count that. She basically kind of stopped speaking to her family because of becoming Muslim. She kind of had it a bit easier because we lived so far away from them. So it's like, I don't know. I don't think I only met my grandmother 4 times before I was 14, because I didn't really know her. They like to joke that being a Muslim is my mum's longest phase.
Longest phase, okay, that's interesting. But after she tried, they didn't talk to each other anymore. What about with you? Did you tell them? At what point did you tell them, or did you, that you're not a Muslim, and how did they take it?
Well, they just kind of oh, okay.
Really?
Yeah, so I think it's quite a unique situation. Is a lot of people would make the assumption that I have non-Muslim family, so by leaving Islam, I would become closer with my non-Muslim family.
Right.
But because of how fractured my upbringing was and how disassociated I was, these people are complete strangers to me.
Oh, you're talking about your mom's family, but what about what about your mom herself?
What about her?
When you left Islam, what happened?
Oh, okay. So this was an epic adventure of what I did. I will give you a play-by-play of how my family found out I had left Islam and how I left home.
Okay, let's say.
Basically, the setting is it's Isha time, okay? And my stepfather has come home from the masjid, and
masjid is mosque.
His mosque,
yeah.
And he's come home, and we got into a fight. And I walked into my room and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I literally can't keep living like this. This is just, it's so much. And by this time I was 19. I was trying to discover who I was as a human being, but I was constantly being thrown down and stunted. And I wasn't able to leave the house. I didn't have any education. And so I was like, I'm not going to do this. I would rather live on the streets and be homeless, because then at least I'll be living by my own terms. So I grabbed my phone and I grabbed my purse and I walked towards the door, and my dad was like, where are you going? And I looked at him, and it's the first time I ever swore. And I said, fuck you and fuck your God. And then I ran like fucking hell out of the house.
Jesus.
Wow.
Don't recommend at all.
Don't recommend?
Have a plan. Have money. Have somewhere to go. Don't do what I did.
What happened?
Well, it was kind of tough. So
I bet.
My parents earned too much money, so I could not get government benefits. I thankfully had somewhere where I could stay. I was sleeping on someone's couch. And so I had to go through a whole lot of drama in order for me to find. And because also I didn't have an education, the highest level of schooling I had attained was year 6, so I was 12. And I had no university, I had no job experience. I didn't know how to do anything at 19. So I was basically having to learn how to function as a human being in society. And I was years behind my peers. And so that's why I don't recommend. I recommend, if you're in a situation where it's safer for you, don't leave until you're fully prepared to fucking lose everything.
So, Nick, wait, hold on. So you didn't have, you're saying that you had education until, I guess, 6th grade?
Yeah, so when I was 12.
And then what happened after that? You didn't go to any girls' Islamic school or anything like that? Or your parents decided not to educate you anymore?
So my dad, when he's not a sheikh, is a teacher. So he is got many, like 20 years of university. He's an electrical engineer.
Can you repeat that last part because your audio got cut a little bit?
So he has like 20 years of university under his belt. He's an electrical engineer. He's pure mathematics, physics, chemistry. Like he's one of those, like he spent years studying this at university.
And then he became a sheikh?
Oh, he was a sheikh with that. He was studying it at the same time. You can study both. They make sense together. What are you talking about?
Yeah, a lot of people. Yeah.
Okay.
No, mom.
Yeah, and my mum was a TESOL teacher, so she taught English as a second language. Mm-hmm. And so they pulled me out of school because they're like, well, we don't like what you're being taught in school. So when I was in primary school, I was in Queensland, which is a predominantly, I guess you'd call it a very conservative state. So like they teach Bible studies in the public schools. They have like music and all that sort of stuff. So mum was like, well, I don't like what you're learning in school. So moving down to Melbourne, and it just so happened to be convenient that I was wearing a niqab at the time, but when we moved down to Melbourne, so she's like, well, you don't need to go to school. I can teach you everything you need to know. So it was quite regimented and restricted. So they would, like, for example, my education, again, which is where my parents have failed, was here is the entire Britannica encyclopedia. You're going to start at A.
Okay.
And you're going to write an essay about this topic. And so,
okay.
like, and here's a science textbook, so you need to have all these questions done by the end. Or here's a maths textbook. These are all the questions you need to have done by this night. Right. So a lot of my like science and like my English or like my study was again, another thing my parents failed at was because they forced me to memorize the Quran. I have a really good memory, so I can remember lots of scientific facts and all that sort of stuff. So whenever I would have these discussions with my parents, I'd be able to like bring up all this stuff that they brought me. And so I guess my education was very restricted. So like, for example, I wasn't taught about like sexual reproduction. I wasn't taught about anything like that at all, because, why do I need to learn that? I'll learn that on my wedding night, kind of, stuff I did learn about evolution, and it made sense to me. Like, evolution made sense to me, but then I remember I went to my dad and I was like, well, I've reached the topic about evolution, and he's like, yeah, just answer the questions, but no, in Islam, this is not real. And I was like, oh, but it's science.
Just answer all the questions, but know that in Islam, this is not real?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, okay. So did you memorize the complete Quran?
I did.
You're a Hafiz?
I was actually a Tajweed teacher.
No way. Okay, but
this is possibly one of the most amazing and bizarre stories I've ever come across. It's incredible. So
I was telling Ali that you are the ex-Muslim that we were missing. Like, you're like a hidden gem, okay? Because you're this ex-Muslim female activist that doesn't look like other ex-Muslims because you're white. So you're breaking all stereotypes that's out there. but you're also very knowledgeable about the Quran and the tafsir. And I can't just wait. Like I was going to get to this at the end, but
out-Muslimed all the Muslims.
Like I can't wait for your videos.
My favorite thing to do. It's my favorite thing to do.
Out-Musliming
my first question when a Muslim says something to me, they're like, "Oh, in Islam it says this." I'm like, "Where? Give me the hadith. Give me the ayat. Give me the scholar. Give me what madhab is this from? Like, who says this? Who says what?" And then they kind of run away because they can't answer my question.
Like, I can't wait for your videos to come out and you started humiliating all these people that keep acting like all these ex-Muslims don't know. I mean, for you to do it, it's going to be, I was telling you before we went live, it's going to be more humiliating to them than anyone else, because for them it's going to look really bad if a woman out-Islams them in their knowledge. So this is going to be great. Like, you're going to have a YouTube channel, right? What's the YouTube channel called?
It's just Heretical Grey.
Heretical Grey. Heretical Grey. Okay. It's going to be great. I was going to get to this later, but
following that.
Yeah. But I was going to get to this at the end, but I couldn't stop myself. But with regards to your parents, though, when you told them that, when you said "fuck you" and left, did you talk to them after? Ever?
No. Oh, I have spoken to them periodically throughout the last 9-10 years. I have spoken to them. Right. So it's funny. I remember years ago I did a blog post about it, but I was talking about the phases that once you've left home, the emotional manipulation your parents do. And so at first they were like, "Come home, what are we going to tell the community, blah, 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 blah." And then it continued on, "Oh, what's your issues with Islam? Let's talk about it." And then it turned to, "If you don't come home, you're disowned." And I was like, "Disown me."
But what was there?
Why is you so strong?
Belief?
This is so inspiring. Like, you're like no. But anyway, like it was like everybody is like all the other people are like not to like say anything less about other people's experience. But people are like, "Oh, my family disowned me." But you're like, "Go ahead and disown me. I don't give a shit." Like, this is amazing. But go on, Ari. Sorry.
What was there? So when you were growing up, what did you hear from them about apostasy? And then when you actually did this, fuck you, fuck your God, and you left. So I have so many questions about this. So when you did that, were you aware of their views about apostasy and how it would happen? And how did they reconcile that with their own daughter becoming an apostate?
Okay, so I knew who Ayaan Hirsi Ali was. I guess you could say she would be the first ex-Muslim that I discovered. Given that my stepfather is Somali and my mum adopted Somali as a nationality, which is the thing weird white converts do, is they adopt the nationality of whoever they marry. That could be an entire video.
Wait, so other than your mom, which is a white convert, you're saying other white converts seem to do the same?
Oh, yeah. I know so many who've married Algerians and they adopt Algerian culture or Pakistani culture. They just kind of adopt them because they've been taught that they hate themselves. They hate being white or being Australian or being whatever they are. So they kind of adopt this other culture. Even the way they wear, like the clothes and act. Anyway, so I knew who Ayaan Hirsi Ali was, and I think, I can't remember how old I was, but when her video came out, that documentary Submission or Submit came out.
Right, the one with Theo Van Gogh.
My mother lost her fucking shit when that came out. She's like, "This woman has left Islam. She deserves to die." And she's like, "She's a murtad." Because I knew murtad, yeah? She's like, she's a murtad. This, and I was just like, I think it's cool. And then when the director was killed, I was like, "Oh, he deserves it." So I kind of knew my family's thoughts on it. And I think this is where, in a sense, I differ from a lot of ex-Muslims because I was raised in such an extreme or authentic or, I don't know, I guess you could say, like, fucked up Islamic household. It's like, this stuff was all, like, kind of factual to me. So, like, when, like, I've met other ex-Muslims who say, "Oh, but, it was like, I left Islam because, my thoughts was about Aisha." I was like, "Yeah, you married a 6-year-old aunt." Like, that was what my mentality was growing up, because I'm like, this is what I've been taught. I don't know anything outside of this. And if you don't follow this little bubble that I've grown in, you're not a strong enough Muslim kind of mentality.
Right.
And so I knew the sentencing for apostates was death. I knew that because I studied it. Yeah, I studied the fact that each madhab, what their thought patterns are. And this is even before I knew that I was like a murtad. Like I knew what these were going into it. And
but by the way, before you continue, the way you say murtad and the way you say madhab and the way you say fiqh and all this stuff, it just shows how serious you were about your Islamic studies.
Yeah, you've got the pronunciations down.
Yeah,
really, really well.
Thank you.
Okay, go on. Sorry.
No, so basically, like, I knew the sentence for it. So when I was in Somalia, like, you know, there were Christians were killed. A young Somali man, he converted to Christianity and he was killed by his family. My dad's own family said that if anyone had left Islam, they would take them to the highest mountain and throw them off the top. I mean, wrong punishment, but still, like, the idea was there. And so...
wrong punishment. You should correct your dad and his Islamic studies. We're going.
And so... I knew what it was. Like, you know, my brother, when I left home, my second brother said that I deserved to be raped and murdered because I'm a traitor.
Oh,
and so
fucking hell.
I was just like, granted, he was only like 11. But then
you're 11. Okay, let's just repeat this for people that missed it. Your 11-year-old brother told you that you deserve to be raped and murdered for leaving Islam.
Yes, because I was a traitor.
You're a traitor.
And it was just, I was like, yeah. I'm like, shut the fuck up. Like, you're a child. But it's like, it makes you wonder, like what were my parents saying about me behind my back?
Right.
And I was just like, you know, whatever. And even like my family, whole family knows that I've left Islam. And about probably 4 years ago, I got in touch with one of my sisters because I was like, oh, she looks like a liberal, in quotation, feminist Muslim. I was like, maybe she's like, I can corrupt her and bring her to the dark side. No, that didn't work. But I remember having this conversation with her and I was like, you know, Islam like says that I have to die, right? And she's like, oh, yeah, but like only if you're in like Syria or Pakistan. Like you're in Australia, so you're safe. That's literally like how it was. And I was like, oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah. How many brothers and sisters do you have total?
I'm the oldest of 7.
Okay.
We had our own little like tribe.
When is the last time you talked to your parents? Or I mean, it's up. If there's anything you don't want to talk about, let us know.
But no, that's fine. So, ironically, the last time I spoke to my mother was when she messaged me pleading for me to get her out of Somalia. Because my Muslim brother who lives in Australia couldn't do anything because he's hopeless, but her apostate daughter could help her.
Oh, now that they need
when
you,
was this?
all of a sudden things change.
When was this?
A few years ago, 4 years ago, I think.
Okay, and so, how is she with you though? Is she, when you talk to her, is everything cordial or is it?
Let me finish. This is the role.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
She's me and she's saying, "Oh, you know, I'm so sorry. This is all your stepdad," and I'm just sitting there like, And I was like, well, honestly, the only reason why I helped bring her and my siblings back to Australia is I wanted my siblings to not be in Somalia. I wanted them to be in Australia, so that even if they want to choose to stay Muslim, they have opportunities in this country, whereas they don't have them in fucking Somalia. Like, there's no education. Like, what can my sister do? Like, my sisters can't do anything. One of my sisters said she wanted to be a doctor. She can't do that in Somalia.
Wait, why couldn't she go and come back? Like, she was in Australia, Somalia, and she couldn't go back to Australia? Why couldn't she? She's like a native.
So one, they had no money. 2, my stepdad's family pretty much run the area that they were in. So she couldn't escape. So she needed help to get from tiny little village of Somalia to a bigger village in Somalia, to get to a city in Somalia, then to get out of the country. And I was like,
wait, so they went to Somalia and your stepdad decided that to imprison them, technically? Like, keep them there?
Well, see, the thing is as well, like when I was having this conversation with my mother when she contacted me and asking me for help, I was like, yeah, I'll help you. Like, 1, you're my mum, and 2, I want to get my siblings out of a fucking war zone. Right. And so, I don't know, like, if she lied to me or anything like that. But basically, the Australian government couldn't help her get out of there because Somalia is a no-go zone. You don't go there. It's a red zone. You don't go to fucking Somalia. There's no embassies. They're literally going to be like to you, if you can get to an embassy, good luck, kind of thing.
Why did she go to Somalia?
Well, one, because Somalia, she knew the country. That's where my stepdad is from, blah, 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 kind of thing. Yeah.
Weird.
And so...
Dar es Salaam.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Dar es Salaam, exactly.
Okay.
And so, I got my family back to Australia, and I went to see her for the first time in 4 years. And it's the first time I'd pretty much spoken to her. And I had so much anxiety, and I was like, but and then in my head, and it's so sad. And I think it's a factor that affects all ex-Muslims is this tiny part of you still has hope that your family will accept you for who you are. Like this tiny part. And it doesn't matter what they say or they do. You think some part of them. And when they turn around and say, oh, I'm sorry, I want to build a relationship, you part of you's like, oh, maybe she's not lying to me this time. And so I went to meet her, and I did it in a neutral setting. And within not even 5 minutes, I was like, nah, she hasn't changed. And I was there with a friend, and because I didn't go by myself. And it's the funniest thing that ever happened while I was there. And it just, again, solidified everything in me. Is basically we were talking about like anime. Now, as you probably can tell, I'm a bit of a nerd. I'm a big anime fan. And I was talking about how, like, people can get really invested in these anime characters because the episodes go for so long, like it's 600 episodes, like these characters are your family. And my mum starts yelling, they're not real. They're not real. How can you care about it? It's not real. And I just turned around and I was like, your God's not real. And
Okay.
Yeah.
Conversation didn't end well.
Wait, you got cut. So this was the day that you went to pick her up?
No, the day I went to see her after she'd been in the show. I didn't pick her up. Why would I do that?
Right. Okay.
So she was here, and then she was like, oh, I want you back in my life. And I was like, okay, that's fine. And so I'd never had closure. I'd never gotten everything off my chest. So I sent her a message saying, this is what I do. And she didn't know about the ex-Muslim stuff that I do. So I basically sent her this entire thing saying, look, this is what I need you to understand. Like, you need to admit that these are all the things that you've done. This is what, you deprived me. Like, I've become who I am today in spite of you. Like, you have no credit for who I am as a human being. And so I sent her this whole thing, and then I mentioned in it, I'm like, you would not support me for one of my biggest passions and one of the things that I literally do every single day. And that is, I support and I speak for people who are escaping religious violence and abuse. Like, that is what I do. And you will never, ever support that. But if you want me in your life, you have to accept that I am going to speak up about Islam and your religion, and I'm going to bring this to light. That was part of what I said of like in 1,000-word essay I sent her. She responded with, I'll support you helping people escape abuse, but I will not support you speaking bad about Islam. And in a sense, the conversation just kind of pretty much went nowhere, and I've just cut her out of my life completely because I've had to make the conscious decision that I want someone in my life who's going to support me for what I do, for what I need, what I do and who I am as a person. And I realized that she will never accept me because even then she will still be saying things like, I love you for the sake of Allah. I'm like, no, I don't believe in Allah. Don't say that. I want you to say, or she'd say it in Arabic. I'd be like, I want you to say, Ana uhibbuk, not Ana uhibbuka fillah. Like, I don't want you to add Allah into this conversation. You should love me for your car. And she just wouldn't accept it. She's like, I want Jannah for you. I'm like, Jannah's not real. And so the conversations would not go anywhere. And then I had to make that decision where she won't accept me for who I am. I'm a very outspoken person, and I'm not going to tolerate this bullshittery in my life. Like, what if I have kids? I'm never going to want my kids to associate with her because she is so into the religion and Islam that she would push Islam on my children. And I would not want that to happen. So I had to make that decision.
Wait,
as for the rest of my family, I don't speak to them at all.
Sorry, say that again? The rest of
as for the rest of my family, I don't speak to any of them at all.
So your siblings are all still Muslim?
Yep.
أنا أحبك في الله.
أنا أحبك في الله, which is I love you for the sake of Allah.
This is this shows how big of a fucking disease this religion is. Like, the love that a mother has for her children is such a powerful, natural love that for a religion like Islam to be able to fuck with that, it has to be a powerful virus to be able to fuck with this so consistently and so.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah. And now that means that I only love you because of God. Like,
it's I love you conditionally.
Conditionally. Oh shit.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's conditional. The only unconditional is God, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, that's terrible. So what? So you said that
I have
your you said that your mother's family. Like the family that's not Muslim, that the Catholic and the Jewish aspects of it, that they're like strangers to you. But since you left, did you try to change that at all? Did you at least just because they are family, like maybe reach out?
I did try, but so I was like, I'm going to speak to these people. They're non-Muslim. They're my family. I'm going to try and speak to them. And it took me a lot of years before I could even like I speak to them like on the random. I just couldn't keep people who would defend my mother, defend her religion to me. Mm-hmm. So, for example, I would say, oh, well, like why I asked like my grandmother, for example, I'm like, why didn't you say anything to my mum when she forced me into a niqab at 12? Why didn't you say anything when she took me out of school? And she's like, oh, but it's this Islam, it's the religion. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? You're not even a Muslim and you were there literally letting this happen to your grandchildren. Like, you serious? Like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, you didn't think when my brother married a 16-year-old, like, you weren't like, I don't know. Like you didn't think to say anything at all. And so, I don't know. I have adopted this thing where I only want to keep people that are going to have a positive impact on my life and will be honest with me and do that. And I just feel with her family, they just were very much like, oh, well, it's Islam. And I'm like,
no, but how much, like, if you think about how much could your mom make you do things? So, do you think that it may have been because they couldn't, again, I'm not defending them. I'm just really, really curious. Do you think it may have been because they couldn't get her to change? Maybe they had talked to her about it, but she wouldn't, or they had no control over her?
Like, they never tried, because I asked them.
Yeah, they never tried.
Tried. They just kind of let it go. And I was like, that's fucking terrible. Like,
it is.
Like, okay, I'm not a parent. Okay, I don't have children, and I don't understand. And I'm not necessarily the most nurturing human being on earth. But even then, like, if I see an injustice being done to somebody, I'm going to speak up. Like, that's what I'm going to do. Right. And I was like, and if you're seeing your own flesh and blood, why aren't you speaking up? And
you're right.
And sadly, this is a thing that happens with a lot of convert families, like, especially, like, even new ones, because of, like, who my mum was, and because she became Muslim so many years ago, a lot of the baby converts would be, like, directed towards her, and she'd create her own little jihad circle with them. But
baby converts, you mean like women?
Women converted to Islam, and they were, like, just converted. So when a woman becomes Muslim, they would kind of push them towards, my mother, because she was so knowledgeable in Islam and blah, 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 blah. And so, it's kind of like the thing that these women do is, like, their families don't say anything. Like, they don't question why their families have to sit separate. They don't question why the girls can't play sports, they can't run around, and the boys can do whatever they want. Like, I remember a time I was 13. I was a child, and obviously I was in a niqab, and I was playing with other 13-year-olds my own age, and I remember I climbed a tree, and my mum was so angry, and she was so angry, not because I climbed a tree, because she didn't care if I climbed trees in the backyard, but she was angry because Muslim men saw me climb the tree, and they thought that I was an adult woman climbing a tree with children. And then she's like, oh, but now, like, you've caught a man's attention. And so when I remember bringing that up to like my grandmother, she was like, oh, but it's Islam. And they treat it like a culture and like a religion that you can't touch. And that's probably one of my biggest pet peeves when it comes to this sort of thing. So it frustrates me so much.
It does. Like I've noticed that with homophobia, and like they had a controversy here in like where I live about the public schools. They're starting to teach sex ed curriculum. They're going to teach about like same-sex couples, and a lot of parents. I mean, some obviously religious Christian people, but a lot of Muslim parents are coming up, and they're really angry about it as well. And people will condemn the Christians who are homophobes, but they won't condemn Muslim homophobia. And I'm like, that's bigotry. That's like you're holding the Muslims to a different standard. You're not like Muslim homophobia is okay, but Christian homophobia is not, there's a lot of double standards. It is supremely frustrating.
Have you had this experience that if you're talking about Islam, has anybody yet told you that you're white, so you can't talk about Islam? Anything like that? They don't know you.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yep. So I remember having this conversation with a person, and they were born again. And I was already like, man, you're crazy. So you can't nothing. Anyway, I was talking about Islam.
I like how you don't like, you just go right to the point, like, oh, you're just crazy. Like, you don't even sugarcoat it. All right, go on.
So we were having this conversation, and I was talking about Islam. And I was saying how, well, Islam does this and Islam does that. And I was bringing up all these points. And she turns around and she goes, Nick, you were taught the wrong version of Islam.
Oh, fucking hell.
And I just was like, I'm done. I'm fucking done.
But do you speak Arabic?
It's really rusty because I haven't spoken it because I choose to not speak it. Just because it brings up really uncomfortable conversations. And it's actually a conscious thing that I've done the last maybe 3 years. So like I can speak, like when I speak Arabic, I sound like an Arab, and when I speak Somalian, I sound like a Somalian. So when I used to work at my last workplace, so I work where I live in Melbourne is basically Muslim. So where I was working, we had a lot of Muslim people coming in, and I used to say their names properly. I guess you could say, like, it'd be like Muhammad Abdul Razak Abdurrahman. Like, I'd be like, that's how I say their names. And so I'd be like, how the fuck does this white girl know how to say our names so properly? Oh, fuck. And so because when my mum converted to Islam, she changed my name from Nik to an Islamic one.
Right.
And so there was also this confusion. So I would kind of get away with it because I'm white. So they would assume that I was like Russian or Serbian because it was a weird name. But Muslims, they'd come in and they'd be like, oh, what's your name again? Sorry, what was your name? And I'd be like, this is my name. And they'd be like, oh, are you Muslim? And I'd be like, no. Because I knew what would happen next. I knew the exact course of the conversation. So I've had to if Muhammad Abdul Razak Abdurrahman came into my workplace or I bumped into her, I'd be like, Muhammad Abdi Razak Abdurrahman. Like I would anglicize.
That's still pretty good.
You try to pronounce it in a Western way.
But Nick, here's the reason I asked you that question is because that's a really good way when people come up and say, hey, listen, because most people are going to come up and say that you shouldn't speak about Islam because you've been taught the wrong version, you're white. You bust out the Arabic on them. Do the opposite. Just go up.
No, but this was at work, so she couldn't do that. Because
they'd be like, yeah, okay. I mean in general.
Like if sorry.
Talk to Muslims or someone about Islam or something like that. When generally it's Muslims, I tend to do it a lot more with Muslims, and it's just my guilty pleasure. I freaking love doing this.
Yeah. They'll
come up to me and I'll talk to them about Islam, and then they'll be like, oh, but Islam, it says there's no compulsion in religion. And I'll be like, oh, you mean لا إكراه في الدين قد تبين الرشد من الغي فمن يكفر بالطاغوت ويؤمن بالله فقد استمسك بالعروة الوثقى لا انفصام لها والله سميع عليم. You mean that ayat in the Quran? And they're like, oh.
Oh, that's amazing.
Oh, this is
And then
great.
do you ever tell them the very next verse? Because the very
Oh,
next
of course I do. Allahu alladhina amanu. Yeah, of course I tell them that one. Yeah. So they always kind of I love, it's like my favorite thing to do because I guess I'm taking advantage of my white privilege here, but I love to do it with Muslims because they just make this assumption that I don't know anything. So I'm just like, give me all your arguments, throw them at me, just give them to me. Like, I want all of these arguments, and now I'm going to destroy you. So I remember I had this one encounter. So we have, in our CBD in Melbourne, we have a lot of, I think they're in the UK. I can't remember what they're called, but it's like Muslim Association or something like that. They're like, they love to hand out their little flyers from One Media, those flyers. And so I remember they were handing one, and normally I ignore them because I'm like, ugh, I can't be fucked. Like, I really can't be bothered. But one time it caught my attention is they were holding this pamphlet that said Islam's perspective on atheism. And I was like, do I really need to go buy this new pair of shoes, or do I need to talk to the Muslims about Islam's perspective on atheism? I really need to make this decision. So I went and spoke to them. I took the flyer off. And they just hand them out. Like, you know, they stand and they hold them like this. And I took the flyer, and he was like, oh, hello, how are you? I'm like, oh, I'm good, thank you. How are you? And he was like, oh, do you know anything about Islam? I'm like, oh, a little bit. He's like, oh, why did you select this one? Why did you select this pamphlet? And I'm like, oh, it's about atheism. And he's like, oh. I'm like, yeah, I'm an atheist. He's like, why? I'm like, why are you a Muslim? And he's like, oh, and he starts talking about Islam. It makes sense. And I'm just sitting there. I'm like, oh, okay. He's like, you should really come to the masjid. I'm like, nah. He's like, no, it's welcoming. It's inviting. We know we come there. You can speak to the sheikh. I'm like, look, I'm going to be honest with you, brother. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, akhi, listen.
Akhi means my brother.
My brother.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm like, I've been a Muslim. So I've been there, done that, not interested. Have a nice day. And then I just walked off. And I looked back, and he was just standing there like,
what the fuck?
Fuck just happened? I guess I kind of use it to my advantage.
Right.
When I was like the Nullifidian under Nully, obviously I didn't have my face showing. So a lot of people assumed I was like Lebanese.
Right.
Or like Arab because of how I speak.
Lebanese people look a little bit more European.
Well, they didn't even see my face. Like, just heard my voice. And they're like, you're Australian. You sound like you're an Arab. You're probably Lebanese. And I'm like, I'm not Lebanese because Lebanese don't speak Fusha Arabic. Let's be honest here. They speak this fucked up version of Arabic. I probably just offended every single Lebanese person out there on the earth. But I'm sorry. I need to put this out there. It's Kaifa Halik, not Kaifek. Okay? It's Kaifa Halik.
Yeah, they just come. They're like Kaifak. I'm like, that's not. Like,
what the?
yeah.
Kaifa
It's like
Halik means how are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, am I Arabic? I remember a little bit of Arabic. This is good. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've actually thought about like taking an online course to like redo my Arabic, like get back into my Arabic, and then I look at it and I'm like, nah, I'm not spending money on that.
Well, Arabic translators are actually it's a very, very lucrative skill right now. If you're an Arabic translator.
Yeah, but like I'm a white person, and like I'd probably get killed by the Muslims if I was like...
a lot of the Arabic translators that work with like the U.S. military and U.S. intelligence, everything.
Ali, what are you doing? We need her. We need her to make ex-Muslim videos. Okay, don't. I want her to do the tafsir, like analyze the tafsir on different.
You can join the CIA as an Arabic translator, as a white Arabic translator, and then because that's where we get our funding.
It's
along with Mossad.
Honestly, I need to speak to management because I still haven't received. It's been 10 years. I haven't received any paycheck.
Yeah,
seriously, like what the hell's going on?
I thought Zionists were supposed to be much more organized than this. I don't know.
Yeah. Outro to this podcast when we end, there's our outro actually says that we are funded. Thank you to the great state of Israel and the Zionists for funding us, but we haven't received our checks yet.
Yeah, so I used to do something similar on my old videos, which have disappeared. My outro used to be it was like, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. But if you would like extra brownie points from Allah or some more good deeds, make sure you thumb down this video.
So listen, I have some questions to ask you about just because there's a lot of debate, especially among. Armin knows a lot about it. There's a big sort of rebellion against the hijab going on in Iran. People taking off their hijabs, burning their hijabs. Over here, a lot of the discourse among ex-Muslims and especially among ex-Muslim women is this thing around the hijab, right? So. First is this idea that nobody chooses to wear the hijab, and to one extent, nobody even chooses to be religious because you're indoctrinated into it. So aside from that aspect, aside from the indoctrination thing, what was your experience like? I know you started wearing it very, very early. What was your experience like taking it off for the very first time? And what's your perspective on women who convert like your mother, who actually actively choose to wear the hijab and the niqab?
Well, when I took my hijab and niqab off, it was fucking cold. That's the first thing I noticed, because I left home in the middle of winter and I was like, fuck, my ears are cold. I don't have the abaya on. I don't have my hijab on. I'm cold.
That's so cute and sad, because every time we hear an ex-Muslim woman that they talk about the first time they took their hijab off, and they talk about this liberating moment that they feel the wind in their hair, and they were like, finally I could wear whatever I want. Nobody gets to tell me. And your first experience was like, shit, this is cold.
That's because they live in hot desert and tropical countries, Armin. That's why. So they take it off, they feel the wind in their hair. But if Alaska was like Iran, right? And Alaska became an Iran colony, then loads of women, they'd take off their hijabs. They're like, oh, we're rebelling. It was like, oh, shit. Okay, wait. Maybe we'll rebel. First, put on the space heater.
I've got this theory that because I wore the hijab from 7 and the niqab at 12, I have this theory that because I wore it from such a young age, my thermogenics in my body's fucked up. Like, I can't handle anything below 25 degrees. Like, I'm too cold. I need like 40-degree weather, and I'm a happy person.
Oh, shit.
But
don't come to Canada.
Yeah, nah. So my opinion on this whole, like, hijab is a choice, blah, 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 like, no hijab day. Like, I was on the podcast about no hijab day, and I'm a big advocate for choice.
Right.
But if you're a Muslim woman and you say you put the hijab on because you want to put the hijab on, you really have a choice, because if you're a Muslim woman, Allah says in the Quran to put the hijab on, to cover yourself.
Wait, is it the Quran? That's a hadith, no?
So in the Quran, Surah An-Nur, ayah 31, it says...
Oh, shit.
Surah An-Nur, that's 33, right? Yeah. Surah 33?
Yeah. All right, but okay.
But basically it says, oh, women of the believers, pull your shawls around you, guard yourself, and without your mahram men, blah, 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 blah.
Right, but it doesn't mention covering your hair.
But isn't that for the wives of the Prophet?
No. That's the two separate things.
And then there's another one. Yeah. And then you have to take the hadith, which correlates to it, which is narrated by Aisha, the Prophet's wife. It says that when the ayat about the hijab came down, the women of the believers ripped off their aprons and put them over them. And then it continues on with, like, we can get into a whole debate about what the hijab is and what the niqab is and all that sort of stuff. But basically, I'm like, well, if that's the case, you've been ordered to do something. So if you don't do it, you're sinning, which means you're being coerced into it. Whether you're being coerced into it by your father, your imam, or a god, who fucking knows? You're still being coerced into it. So therefore, if you do not want to sin, you're being forced to wear it. So therefore, there is no choice in that matter. Right. However, if you want to be naive and stupid and you think that you have a choice about wearing a hijab, fucking you can do whatever you want to do. But they have to understand there are women who don't have that choice to wear a hijab. Like, they don't. Right. And I kind of feel like it frustrates me, this whole argument about the hijab, because one, it's the same argument over and over and over again. And I'm like, there are so many voices screaming in this echo chamber about the hijab. There are so many more important topics regarding women's rights in Islam which are being violated. Yes, the hijab is one, but that's because the hijab is a visible thing about women in Islam. No one really talks much about inheritance or divorce or that. I can tell you right now, I can go to any ex-Muslim and probably about 80% of Muslims and ask them, if a woman divorces her husband, what happens to her dowry? If a woman divorces her husband, where do her children go? None of them are going to know the answers to that because no one's talking about those sort of issues in Islam.
And there are more direct verses in the Quran for these than the hijab. Like the hijab verse, it's not directly in the Quran. The Quran refers to it, but then you need the hadith to back it up to make it actually the actual hijab.
Or at least it's debated. It's actively debated and it's controversial.
But the ones that you're mentioning, they're you don't even need to go to the hadith for that. There's
inheritance, the witnessing, all of that.
These are direct Quran verse for it, but to counter that, however, let me know what you think about this. Like a lot of women in Iran that they're taking off their hijab off, they're saying it's not just about the hijab. They're using the hijab as a symbol for all things anti-woman. Like this is a fuck you to the government for everything anti-woman, not necessarily just the hijab.
Yeah, so that's a completely different area and topic. Like, if a woman does that in Melbourne, it's like, the fuck are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Like, you're taking your hijab off on Burke Street, waving it around. Everyone's going to be like, okay, cool, right? Do you, boo. Like, but when you look at places like Iran, or if a woman wants to do this in any Muslim country, so Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, Saudi, any of these places, like that's what they needed.
Can you move a little bit to your left? Your face is cut in half.
Sorry.
There you go. Okay, go. Continue. Sorry.
These countries are women, they are violating rights. And for them, it's a symbol. For example, that's why I've always said, like, if you are in Australia, you convert to Islam and you're putting that, like my mum, she put the hijab on. That was her choice. But in places like Iran, they don't have that choice. Right. They'll be thrown in jail. My mum can put a hijab. I could go outside my house right now and put a hijab on. No one's going to throw me in fucking jail. I could take my hijab off. No one's going to throw me in fucking jail. I go to Iran and I do that. I'm going to get thrown in jail. I go to Saudi, Afghanistan, any of those places. I'm going to be basically reduced to nothing.
Iran is the only country that hijab is mandatory even for foreigners, right? Like Saudi Arabia, it's not mandatory for foreigners.
It kind of is, but
in Saudi, it's if you're in the compound, you don't have to. If you're in like an American compound or a British compound, you don't have to wear the hijab. You actually don't have to wear you can wear whatever the hell you want to wear. But if you're on the streets, you do have to.
Yeah.
Right. So Iran would become the only country where anywhere public the hijab is mandatory for both citizens, Muslims, non-Muslims, and foreigners.
I can actually give you. I spoke to a client of mine who just returned from Tehran. And
wow, you even say Tehran? Okay, yeah, good.
She returned from it. She's an Australian woman. She's a white woman, and she has come back from visiting Iran. And even though you can blatantly see that she's a Westerner, she was spoken to by the morality police, and she was told that she had to put a hijab on, and she had to do this, and she had to do that, and all that sort of stuff. So in the circumstance, it's something like, and I fully support White Wednesdays and all that sort of moment because I'm all about not women. I'm about everybody having a fucking choice. Like,
you actually have some issues against the feminism. Did you want to bring that up as well?
Watch my Twitter follower account go down.
That's okay. Mine went down when I started talking against Trump.
No, go ahead.
I started talking about it. Mine halved. It was hilarious.
Okay, so for example, I am a female. In case no one's figured it out yet, I'm online. I'll put it out there. I am a curvy woman, and I most recently had a video, and I posted it talking about No Hijab Day, and I was walking through the streets, and the amount of fucked up comments I received on that of men pointing out things like my cleavage and all that sort of stuff, and I was like, whatever. Like, I don't get offended, and I feel like feminists sometimes may feel like they need to be offended. I guess it's the same thing with Muslims. They need to be offended, and they have to arc up about it and talk about this. And I'm like this person, yeah, cool. You posted a picture of boobs bouncing. Yeah, cool. My boobs bounce. Who cares? I don't give a fuck. Whereas some feminist friends of mine are like, oh my God, you should report him and you should do this. And I'm like, I'm too fucking tired to do that. I feel like, in countries like Somalia, for example, feminism is needed. But then is it feminism or is it education that's needed? Do we need, I understand the concept of it, and I agree with women having the rights to vote and equality. And if you want to look at feminism from that point of view of equal everything with males, I agree with that. What I don't agree with is this, like, bullying tactics that they use to, like, badmouth and dox and paint, like, all men with this evil tarnish, that they're all like this and they're all like that. Like, if a man wants to call himself a feminist, one, I'm like, why the fuck are you calling yourself a feminist? But if you want to call yourself a feminist, call yourself a feminist. But some of these feminists are like, you can't call yourself a feminist. And I'm like...
I had that experience. I called, someone said, you know, are you a feminist? And it was actually someone saying, Ali, are you a feminist? I'm like, yeah, of course. Like, if you define feminism as equal rights, equal political, economic, social rights for men and women, of course I'm a feminist. Because if you're not a feminist, you're an asshole then. And then as somebody else came in, they're like, well, that's actually really fucked up of you to call yourself a feminist, because you can say you're pro-feminist because you don't have a uterus, you don't know what it feels like, you've never been followed at night. And I'm like, okay, I'll be pro-feminist. What do you want me to? So it became this is the question. I mean, is it actually feminism by definition, the term, there's an issue, or all of the political bullshit around it? Because I
feel like it's been hijacked, like the word atheist.
Yes.
If you say you're an atheist, it's been hijacked. Yes. So everyone instantly says, like,
no. The word atheist hasn't been hijacked to the point of no return. To the point of no return.
Like, if I go and tell someone I'm an atheist, they respond with, oh. Right. You know? And so if I tell someone, like, and then I feel like the same reaction can be if I was to go and tell someone I was a feminist, they would if they really weren't a feminist or in that world, they'd be like, oh, so you're one of those. So I feel like in a sense, the terms are getting, we won't say hijacked, but there are bigger, louder voices in those worlds, which are, I guess, corrupting it or making it, like, not having necessarily. But then perhaps atheist was the wrong word, because atheism has
liberal is a good word. Liberal is being hijacked. No, but okay. So here's the thing. I think, like, this is why I actually might want to keep using the word feminist, because I notice a lot of people that used to call themselves feminists, a lot of women, they call themselves women rights activists now because of how the bad PR feminism has gotten, right? And a lot of people that used to call themselves liberal, now they call themselves classical liberal because of a lot of people on the regressive left that have, made the word liberal a little bit toxic. And I think, like, we should just claim it back, these words.
Yes.
Right? We shouldn't let them steal it from us. And also the words that the people use to demonize. I mean, women's rights is human rights, right? And if feminism is women's rights, then feminism, we shouldn't let people. I mean, I guess feminism might be a little bit harder to claim back because it's been so, but we have to try. I think we have to try to get it back.
No, but I think Nick, I actually agree with Nick when you brought out the atheist term. I think you're right about that. I think that, first of all, atheist, the word has been demonized way before. Hold on. But we're trying to get that back and reclaim that as well. I mean, that's one of the reasons that we're trying to normalize it. But at the same time, there is so many. Recently, in the last few years, like, a lot of people I know who are very active in the atheist movement, there's so many asshole atheists out there. They're saying so much stupid fucking shit that I'm like, oh my God. They're like, oh, are you an atheist? What about this guy? What about? And I'm thinking, oh God, like Richard Spencer.
But it's so stupid to give up a term because there's assholes of that and that.
I am not saying we should give up the term, Armin. No, but we should own it again. I'm just saying that it's the same thing with the word feminist. The problem with the word, it's not a different thing that's happening with the word atheist and feminism. I think it's a very good analogy that you brought up. I don't think that it's inaccurate at all. No, it's just, I mean, we don't like admitting it, but it's
no. What's my parents fight?
Sorry, say that again.
My parents fight.
The difference is that people that are using the word feminist to make fun of something, they're pointing out to something to some really toxic activity, right? But people that should be called, that I agree with them, that should be called out, right? I just wish that the term wasn't going down with those with it, right? But when it comes to the term atheist, it's not the asshole atheist that they have a problem with. It's the atheism itself that they have a problem with, which is not toxic at all.
People have a problem with feminism itself. They do.
No, yeah, but
listen to a Jordan Peterson lecture. I mean, even
you missed my point. My point is that the people that are identifying a problem but think that are associating the problem with feminism, a lot of those people have an actual point. I just wish that that level of toxicity wasn't being associated with the name feminism, right? I feel like that's too granular. I think the entire point is okay. We're going off topic. Another thing, Nick.
Wait. Let Nick have a final word on this.
Yeah, have a final word.
It's like we've done the total the male chauvinist thing here, and like we brought up feminism. See, both the dudes are talking, and then Nick is sitting there quietly.
This is a problem. Oh, go on. We do this with everybody. The fact that you're noticing that we're doing this with a female guest is actually a problem with going too far with feminism. But go on, Nick.
I don't even know. Let's just change the topic. I'm just sitting here listening to you guys, and I'm just like, I'm hungry.
Okay. Can I throw out a question at you that came up in the live chat that I think you're going to like? Somebody who asked this in the live chat. Somebody asked you, "What's your favorite anime?"
Oh, that's a hard one. Because so I don't know if anyone can tell, but I have a sleeve started on this side. I'm getting like a full like DC Marvel sleeve. This is dedicated to anime. But if we were to go through my favorite, I would probably say FMA Brotherhood or Black Clover or Dragon Ball Z or One Punch Man or one.
Death Note.
Continue next.
Not Death Note.
No, I'm actually not a fan of Death Note.
Oh, really? That's the only one I like. How come you have both DC and Marvel on one side?
Okay, so this is a sleeve. Let's go back to feminism. Basically the sleeve that I'm having on this side is kind of actually really sad. So growing up, I wasn't allowed to read books. Let me phrase that. I was allowed to read books, but they were heavily vetted by my parents. So any books that had sexy characters or magic or anything like that was kind of like a big no-no. So I would have to create my own superheroes and books and stuff like that. And obviously I knew who things like Catwoman was and Wonder Woman and Jean Grey and Storm and Mulan and Pocahontas. I knew all these women, who all these characters were. And so I kind of, in a sense, would look up to these characters because they're all women in the world that they live in who have powerful or risen up against things. Like people have asked me, why do I have Catwoman on my sleeve? Like she's a bad guy. I'm like, is she really a bad guy, or is she a woman who's just like, fuck all you? And make my thing. Yeah, so I don't know. It's just like,
I mean, she killed some people, so I don't know. But okay, but is there any copyright issues with having DC and Marvel tattoos? Can they come and sue? No, they can't. Can they?
They can't.
No. Okay.
Basically, I wanted to create a sleeve of strong female characters that I looked up to.
Oh, that's sweet. Your parents, did they have any issues with your taste in anime did they know?
Are you running out of questions?
No, because I remember you meant.
So did your parents have any? Okay, no, go ahead.
No, this is something I think I know because I know some people find it demonic.
Well, I didn't watch TV growing up.
Oh yeah, okay. All right. Well, next question that I really want to get into. You have some strong opinions about reform, Islamic reform.
Yep.
Oh yes, let's get into that. That'll be fun.
No, I'm just gonna let.
We're all gonna agree on this. All three of us are gonna agree on it.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Islamic reform is fucking bullshit.
Yeah. Okay, you are my favorite person in the whole world.
Yeah, actually, I think you're my favorite person too. I think we're having a lot of fun right now.
Okay, so I've seen all sides of the spectrum of Islam can be reformed. Oh no, it's not Islam, it's Muslims that can be reformed. Fuck. Okay. Islamic reform is against Islam. Okay? It's against Islam. So if you're a Muslim and you refute Islam, you're taking yourself outside of the fold of Islam, so therefore you're an ex-Muslim. So you might as well just cut the middle fucking bullshit out of the way and become an ex-Muslim. That's it. That's my opinion.
Okay, great.
Armin, memorize that so the next time we don't go on about this for 15 minutes. This is all you got to say.
Exactly.
Perfect.
So because it's such a big thing about it. So this is what my argument is. Anything, whether I'm talking about ex-Muslims, non-Muslims, or Muslims, is at the end of the day, you go by, if you're a Muslim, you go by the Quran and the Sunnah. That's what you go by. That's where you get your laws from. That's where you get everything from. Yeah, regardless of with your madhab, whether you're like, you're Shafi'i, Hanbali, Ahmadi, Maliki, no, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you're from. This is your primary source. The Quran is your first, Hadith is your second, then you have your Ijma and your Qiyas, and then you've got your Qadis, and there's all everyone in between, right?
Some of the stuff that you're saying is way too advanced for our idea. You're talking about the four school of Islamic thought in Sunni Islam.
Sorry.
Yeah, okay.
The four schools of
You're way too high level for... okay, we'll go.
So basically, when I speak about those things, it's like when someone says something about Islam, I'm like, okay, the first question you need to ask is, where is this in Islam? What is the ruling on it in Islam? So Islamic reform. You cannot make laws because Allah is the only lawmaker. So therefore you can't reform Islam. Therefore Muslims, that's why a lot of Muslims I know don't vote because it's against Islam, because you're voting for someone, so you're putting that person on a higher pinnacle. It's why many Muslims I know do not support Saudi, because Saudi call themselves kings and only Allah can be king. So that just kind of tells you the extremist.
All right, so a lot of the Islamic reformists have realized how shitty their arguments were. So they're coming up with a new tactic, right? So before they were saying, let's read the Quran differently. And we were like, yeah, fuck, that's stupid. And now they're coming up with this new method, all right? And like, why can't we just pick some parts of, like, why can't we have Islam where we ignore, like, some verses cherry pick. Like some verses we don't just be like, okay, this is not part of Islam anymore, but the rest of the Quran, for example, is part of Islam. How would you, what do you say to that?
So whose responsibility is it going to choose what stays in the Quran and what goes out of the Quran? Who's going to go around and delete every copy of the Quran off the internet and off the face of the earth? Why not just have our Fahrenheit 451 right now? Let's just go and destroy all of these books. Who's going to make it? Who determines this? Who are we going to pick? Yeah, Muslims can't even fucking agree on anything. So how are we supposed to pick what stays in the Quran and what goes?
Right.
Well, are we going to cut verses? Are we going to cut an ayat in half because we don't like that bit? Like, what are we going to do? Like, this doesn't make. I mean, granted, the Quran doesn't make sense anyway, but it's going to make not even make any more sense. Like when you go through it, like who? Like for example,
who has the authority?
What if you have, like, okay, are we going to go to Al-Azhar University? Are we going to Al-Madinah University? Like, who's going to make these choices? Like, who are the scholars? How many Muslims are there on earth? Are we each going to vote, but voting's against Islam? So how are we supposed to find someone to pick to tell us what we want in the Quran? It doesn't make any sense. And at the end of the day, people have memorized the Quran. So what are we going to do? Fucking nuke their brains out so they don't memorize the Quran anymore? We can't say Ben. Like, seriously, it is such a bullshit argument. Like, it frustrates me so much because it's like, okay, so basically you're going to start cherry picking Islam, so which means basically you're a munafiq, right?
Oh yeah, which is worse than the kafirs, aren't they?
Yes, exactly, because they're like reserved for the lowest hell of Jahannam. But then my other question is, okay, we get the Quran. Next, we're going to go after Hadith. Do you know how big Sahih Bukhari is?
Ooh.
Do you know how big Sahih Muslim is? Riyadh al-Salihin, Bulugh al-Maram. And then what are we going to do? Completely throw out Tafsir ibn Kathir as well? Like it's just completely illogical and stupid.
So what they're going to do?
I have a question, Nick.
Wait. Let me tell you what they're going to do. They're going to find a few handful of Muslims that will say, like, okay, yeah, I'm just going to cherry pick the parts that I like, and they're going to showcase that to the whole world that, look, this is possible.
Yeah, but Muslims do that already.
Yeah, but the problem is that these people are making it seem like that this book is acceptable, but they're making excuses for, like, these are the people that make Islam look like an acceptable ideology, and are providing cover for a shitload of nonsense that is out there. So I think, to me, not only that they do not have a solution, they're actually part of the problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's look at Christian reform. Let's look at the Bible. Let's look at the Old Testament and the New Testament, okay? I'm going to go with majority of Christians aren't fucked up. Yeah, I'm just going to go with that if we're going to use it as a description. But there are still some Christians that disregard the New Testament. They still exist on the earth. Right. And so therefore Christianity has no problem. And then also, aren't you buying into someone's stupidity and naivety? What, you don't want them to educate themselves? You want to just give them to live this lie? Like, why would you want to do that?
Right.
If you want your human beings to be enlightened and actually understand the world that they're living in, why would you let them continue on living this lie? Why is it that we don't have fucking 50-year-olds who still believe in Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny? Because it's fucking stupid.
Okay, so so by the way, Nick, I completely agree with you on all of this. All right, so it's not about, and whenever I speak about what I think, this is what I say. But this is a question that kind of came up with when we had our previous guest Hassan Radwan on, right? Both Armin and I were talking. So here's the first part of the question, and this is the two-part thing. The first one is that I have actually met people, especially younger Muslims now, who say that they believe in Allah, they believe in Muhammad, they believe La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, but and they believe in that they like the Quran, but they just don't think that it is divine. They don't think God wrote it. They think it was Muhammad and he was divinely inspired to write it. Okay, so if there's somebody who believes in that, believes in Allah, believes in Muhammad, but thinks that the Quran was written by Muhammad, what would you consider them? Is there a middle ground? Would you consider them Muslim? They're obviously not ex-Muslim, and they wouldn't necessarily be Muslim either by the definition of, if you define Muslim as somebody who has to believe the Quran is the word of God. So what would they be?
Okay, Islamic studies time. Okay, so a Muslim is simply somebody who believes in the 5 pillars of Islam. That's what a Muslim is. The Shahada, Zakat, so charity pillars, yeah? I'm going to say them in Arabic and I tell you about them. But the 5 pillars of Islam, that's what a Muslim is. Then you have your next progression up, which is a mu'min, who believes in the pillars of Iman. So that's where you believe in Allah, His books, His angels, the Day of Judgment, His messengers, predestination and destiny, qadar al-qadar. That's what you believe in. So, and then you have your muhsin, which is like the top tier Muslim, yeah? Like the platinum, the gold class Muslims. Now, I'm not a takfiri. Okay, I ain't gonna go around and say you're not a Muslim, you're not a Muslim. But if you're gonna let me finish. No. If I'm gonna have someone come to me and they say, "Oh, well, this I believe in Islam. Like, I can be gay and I can be Muslim," and I'm like, "No, you can't." But if you believe in Allah, you believe that Muhammad is His messenger. Okay, so if we follow that, Allah, Muhammad is His messenger. And you're at Muhammad, and you just tell me that Muhammad wrote the Quran, so you're not going to follow the messenger of Allah because you kind of don't agree with some of the things. Do you not see how stupid you are? Do you not see how illogical you're being right now? Like, I have no issues if you want to be a Muslim and have your rose-colored, watered-down, light Islam. I don't care. Like, it doesn't really fucking bother me. But that's just for you. And I dislike religion. I categorize myself as an anti-theist. I think all religion's stupid, and I think if you follow a religion, maybe you should go seek psychiatric help, actually find out why you need a religion to make you through every single fucking day, because I fucking don't. Maybe I'm just like amazing. But it's like, you're just feeding into ignorance and stupidity and bigotry. Yeah. Like you're feeding into it, and why would you want to do that? Especially ex-Muslims who believe you can reform Islam. Oh, you are so
that pisses me off.
I think you are worse, because why wouldn't you want your family? Okay, so what if a Muslim doesn't want to kill you because we've taken killing apostates out of Islam? Okay, that's fine. Who cares about that? Why would you want them to still be stupid?
Right.
Like, why would you want that? Are you just? And then I kind of I get down to think, I ask questions. I'm like, is it because you're afraid your family won't talk to you? Well, they should accept you for being whoever the fuck you are, whether you're a Muslim or a non-Muslim or an ex-Muslim or anything like that. Like, why do you want to reform Islam? That's my question.
Right.
Why do you want to?
I can't wait till your YouTube channel.
I actually want to ask about your YouTube channel right after I say this. the major issue I see here is that the ex-Muslim movement is growing, and we are seeing that when people become skeptical about Islam, they realize that this is fucking bullshit and they don't want to be Muslim anymore. But I think all these other things that people are highlighting, whether Islamic reform or Muslims that be like, hey, maybe it was divine, people are trying to suggest that maybe there is a less insulting way of going about doing this, and I like, but it's working. What are you? You don't need to. These fringe little groups of people that you find that are saying weird stuff that nobody else is saying. We don't need to promote them because we are getting people are leaving Islam. It's growing. Our movement is working. Or even if they're not leaving, they're becoming out skeptical about it at least, right? I mean, yeah, go on.
If you're an ex-Muslim and you support, let's make a lot of people angry. If you're an ex-Muslim and you support Islamic reform, you're offending every single ex-Muslim that has given their fucking life to be an ex-Muslim, who stands up every fucking day and goes out on social media, in public or whatever, and they speak up about Islam and they try to... You are literally doing the same thing that Muslims, white feminists, the left do when they tell us that our experiences aren't valid enough. That's what you're doing. So you can go and fuck yourself and join those Muslims too if you want to. Don't call yourself an ex-Muslim. Fucking take that label off yourself because you're offending me.
That's a really good point. It is. Yeah, it is sort of diminishing to the sacrifice. It's so easy to do the whole reform thing. And it's almost like an insult to those who actually have the courage to go all the way. It really is. Right. That's such a good point. Okay, so I'm going to move on from this. We have a really good question in the thing. And I want to ask, so we had, Imam Tawhidi, who's a reformer from your country of Australia. I'm sure you're a huge fan. No, I'm kidding. So we had him on this podcast, and I remember asking about Pauline Hanson, who he really supported. You know Pauline Hanson in Australia? She's one of the politicians. Yeah. So she compared all Muslim immigrants coming to Australia to dogs. She said they're basically like dogs. And he was kind of defending that, even though he was a Muslim immigrant himself. And he still identifies as Muslim. And then he accused me of still having some sort of antipathy to dogs because I used to be Muslim and that's why I hate dogs. I'm like, no, it's not about the dogs. It's anyway, whatever. So the question is, where is it? It's the Rational Guard is asking, what do you think about Muslim immigration to Australia?
Okay. So my opinion is that they should go through the proper channels. Okay, because I'm not against immigration. People immigrate to places. I mean, if Muslims didn't immigrate to Australia, I would not be able to go and get myself like a bad pizza at 2 a.m. with extra garlic sauce. Like, that's not cool. That wouldn't happen, okay? But what I'm trying to say is, if you stop and put a ban on all Muslim immigration, what about closeted ex-Muslims who are trying to come to Australia and escape?
Exactly. Yep.
What about their children who are going to come here and be exposed to Western ideals and Western values and science and maths and other people? I mean, I grew up in such an insular society. I didn't have an high school education, but I still fucking left Islam in Australia. Like, it's a possible thing and it can happen. So who are you to say that we should ban that? Tawhidi is a... I'm trying to think of words that are not like just like...
I'm trying to think of all these ways to finish a sentence. I'm just restraining myself.
So am I right now.
But should we go after?
Let her finish.
Okay.
I think ex-Muslims who support Tawhidi, I'm going to put those people in the same category as the ex-Muslims I just said that diminish ex-Muslims' experiences. I'm going to leave it there. I remember on the Nullifidian, when I was on Twitter as the Nullifidian, which he has blocked, because I kept asking him questions. I remember he made this tweet saying this thing about putting checkpoints in front of mosques. And I was like, clearly you have no experience with the Muslim community in Australia. They're already victims in their minds. And you go and you do that to them, it's just going to continuously build up this anger. I know every single young Muslim boy that has gone and fought in fucking Syria for ISIS or Al-Qaeda, I know all these boys because I grew up in the same community as them. They go there because they're angry at the West because they feel that they're being targeted and feel they're being attacked. And you want to add to that? You want to add fuel to the fire? Why would you fucking do that?
Confirm their conspiracy delusions,
exactly.
right? Like
it doesn't make any sense why you would do that.
So...
Sorry.
No,
go ahead.
No, sorry, I interrupt. Here's the thing with Imam Tawhidi. I disagree with almost everything he has said. But what do you think about this issue? I had a debate with him in New York with Imam Tawhidi and Daniel Haqqaju on the same panel, right? And other people think that I shouldn't even have a conversation with him. And I think, like, well, I disagree with him, and I can have a discussion with him about my disagreements with him. The interesting thing is that a lot of ex-Muslims even told me that, why are you giving this guy a platform? And the interesting thing is that the other guy, Daniel Haqqaju, which is on the same panel with me, he thinks that it's okay to kill ex-Muslims under an Islamic regime, to have sex with 9-year-olds, to kill gay people, and to beat your wife. But nobody asked me why I'm speaking with him. Like, but I also disagree with him on almost everything he says. But why do you think there's more sensitivity about me speaking, even though I disagree with both of them? But why did everybody have an issue with me speaking to Imam Tawhidi rather than Daniel Haqqaju? Do you think, like, yeah?
You should speak to everybody.
No,
like you shouldn't not talk to people. The moment you stop talking to people is the moment dialogue and communication stops, and everyone sits there in a little circle jerk. Like, that's what happens.
Right.
But I think I can see where they're coming from. I think it's because if you look at people like Daniel, whatever his name is, he's a Muslim. Yeah, he's a Muslim.
Right.
He identifies as a Muslim. He tells it how it fucking is. He's straight up about it. Tawhidi, on the other hand, what the fuck's his agenda? What goes through his mind? He's so vague in what he says.
But that's what I said to him.
Yeah, to me it comes across as slimy. And I wouldn't have issues. So when you have debates with people, right? When I've debated with people or when I've spoken to people, I'm not trying to put my point across to that person I'm debating with. I'm putting my point across to the people who are watching and listening to what I'm saying. So by having yourself there with Daniel there and Tawhidi okay, think about it. If you're a Muslim, especially if you're a Shia, for example, okay? Because Tawhidi's a Shia.
I don't think so. I don't know what he believes. Like, I've been trying to figure out. No, he says he says he's a Shia, but the things that he believes in is so bizarre that I don't know if there's a category for that.
Say a Sunni Muslim was watching this debate that you had, right? They didn't know much about Tawhidi, they didn't know much about Shiaism, and they saw you and they saw him. It would perhaps in some way would help create questions in their heads by having a differing point of view, which is why we shouldn't silence these sort of people, but we should call them out on their bullshit. I feel myself personally, I don't see it as, oh, how dare you give your platform to this person? Because there's probably ex-Muslims. I can tell you the amount of fucking racism I've received from ex-Muslims being white. I've been told that I was never really a Muslim to begin with by ex-Muslims.
Are you serious? By ex-Muslims?
By ex-Muslims.
What the
They've
fuck?
told me that I was convert and I must have been really stupid to become Muslim. And I'm like, no, that's not the case. So when you have these sort of discussions, and they need to be had, you need to highlight people's stupidity, which is why you could be two ex-Muslims who have completely differing points of view. You could be a ex-Muslim who's so far on the fucking left that you're practically right, and you could have someone who's quite central, and it'll be an interesting discourse, but it'll be what the conversation comes out of the conversation is an interesting thing. But then again, I also kind of put Majid Nawaz on the same bait as Tawhidi. Like, I don't trust those motherfuckers.
Wait, you put Majid Nawaz on the same as Imam?
In the trust sense, because I don't know what they're trying to do. Right. I don't understand the concept because of what they're saying completely goes against what they say they believe in as well. Like, if you say that you're a Muslim and you believe in this, but then you're promoting something else, then you're not that. And it just confuses me. Like, I support Majid Nawaz for things that he says and he does. Like, I'll retweet him. I will never retweet Tawhidi. He doesn't deserve a follow from me. No, I'm joking. I feel like...
I agree with you.
You take those two people who are reformists, of Islam, at least with Majid Nawaz, he supports ex-Muslims and he doesn't fall into this like bed of like cesspool of like right bigotry, and he's not there. He doesn't seem like he's there for the fame. Whereas with Tawhidi, I just kind of get this insincerity. Like, who the fuck walks around like that in the West? Seriously.
Yeah. I have,
but if you watch the debate, if you ever decide to watch it, you can see that there are a lot of the issues that people have with the things that he say. I brought them up. You know what I mean? Like I brought up the fact that he seems to be biased for non-Vilayat Faqih version of Shia Islam. The fact that a lot of the things that he says no Muslim believes in, and a lot of things that he speaks against is things that most Muslims do support. Like I brought all those up. Like it's not like we just talk. Anyway, I don't think that we should, when we think people like person X is so out there and we disagree with them. I think instead of like completely abandoning, we should, if they're getting attention, we should bring and have a discussion with them. Like I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, I think that.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things I just want to say about Majid. I mean, this is obviously biased because
Ali is a huge Majid fan. That's why he's trying to defend him.
No. I don't know. So first of all, here's the thing. I actually don't agree with. I have the same disagreements with him that both of you have.
Right.
Okay. And I, more than a fan, I feel like it's more of a friend thing. Like I feel like he's more of a friend. So it's
not an all or none thing. We could agree on some things and disagree on others.
I'm a fan of, say, Slash from Guns N' Roses, right? If I see him, I would get tachycardia. My heart would. And I've actually met him a couple of times, and I was just like a little girl. It was just insane. Right. But with Majid, so here's the thing with Majid is that Majid has a definition. His definition of Muslim reform is to create a conversation, a place for a conversation that includes everyone from Daniel Hakika Jew to Imam Tawhidi to ex-Muslims. He wants everybody to be able to talk without.
That's not called.
That's his.
Okay,
I know.
It's kind of okay. You know what it sounds like.
I wouldn't call it. I wouldn't call it.
Can I just talk for 1 second to say what I would say to them?
Something. Let me just finish what I'm saying, and then I'll tell you. So, so that's not something that I would call reform like he does. That's why I wanted to call this podcast Enlightenment. I wanted to talk about Enlightenment. I think that's more of an Enlightenment thing than a reform thing, but that's what he actually means. So I think that his heart is in the right place. I don't think.
Right.
I really believe that he is.
Yes.
Yeah, in what he's doing and what he's saying. Like, I 100% believe in all that. But when it comes to the whole call yourself a Muslim but want to change Islam,
we all agree.
No, I mean, okay, but just to be clear, okay, so when it comes people like Majid or other reformers, they fight for secularism. We fight for secularism. They fight for women's rights. We fight for women's rights. They fight for gay rights. We fight for gay rights. There's so many things that we could support each other. The problem, they want more dialogue. We want more dialogue. They want more free speech. We want more free speech. The issue that we disagree on, and we could agree with each other on that, and we could support each other on that. The issue is when they call shit that don't deserve to be called Islam, they call it Islam. They call it Islamic reform. Oh yeah, we want to pick a room and have people have dialogue with each other, Muslims, non-Muslims, ex-Muslims. Great. The moment you call it Islamic reform, I'm like, no, fuck that shit. That has nothing to do with Islam. I could start a chess game with you guys right now, and if I call it Islamic reform, you're gonna like, what the fuck this has got to do with Islam? And I'm like, nothing. I just want to call it Islamic reform. Well, it's bullshit. Why chess is awesome, Islam is not. Don't call this Islamic reform. So when people say like, oh, his definition of Islamic reform is this,
Muslim reform, not Islamic.
Well, is that a recent change? Because it didn't used to be. If it's a recent change, that means that we have made a difference. Because
there have been some changes. So
that's good. So that means that we have. That means okay. If these reform guys are now switching their branding from Islamic reform to Muslim reform, that means that we have made a difference by calling this bullshit out.
Yes, that's the thing. Not only that, but there was another change. Before, everybody used to talk about Reformation. They used to say Reformation. Ayaan Hirsi Ali's book was called Why Islam Needs a Reformation Now. Heretic. That was a subtitle. And it came out in 2015, not too long ago. Why Islam Needs a Reformation Now. Nobody calls it. In my book, I referred to it as Reformation, what these guys are doing. But since then, everybody started calling it reform because everybody started thinking about like Martin Luther, right? So,
yeah,
so they started making
the
that
best
analog.
role model.
Like, oh shit, that's not the analog we want. We want an analog with Voltaire types. We don't want
Enlightenment.
So that's how. So that evolved, and now there's this idea of that it's not Islamic reform, it's Muslim reform. And yes, I agree. I think that's because there was an impact and there was a talk about this. So I feel like there's...
Okay, let's go back to Nick. People are asking about your YouTube channel. What are the type of content that you're going to be... Again, for some people who joined halfway through, what was the name of the YouTube channel?
So it's just the same as my Twitter handle, so Heretical Grey, or Nik J Grey. It's in my Twitter... link.
Yes.
Bobby.
And it's going to be, for those of you who want to look it up, it's at HERETICALGRAY.
And Mike was kind enough to post a link into it in the live chat, so thank you. And but what kind of stuff are you going to be posting there?
So I'm pretty much going to be doing live shows every week, so people can come and ask questions and that sort of stuff, and hear me rant. For a while, but also I'm really good at ranting. But also I'm wanting to kind of do. I feel like there's like this. It's lacking, or maybe it's not lacking, but it's not as overexposed. But definitely in the world of YouTube, there's a huge missing like actual unbiased deconstruction of Islamic teachings. Like it's non-existent. Yes. So, for example. I'm trying to, in a sense, maybe make it more of like an educational resource. Like right now, if I say the word aqidah, not many people know what the fuck that is. You know, if I say fiqh, nobody knows what it is.
Oh, I know.
And so, you know,
what was the first one? I knew the second one. I didn't know the first one.
Aqidah.
Okay, wow, you guys are Arabic.
I love the Farsi when it comes to Aqidah. The first time Armin said Nahjul Balagha, like I was like Nahjul Balagha, and he's like, oh, the Nahjul Balagha. How do you say it? Say it.
Nahjul Balagha.
Oh my God, that is so twisted, Armin. It is.
That's Persian. Okay.
I know.
Okay.
What I'm primarily starting off with is what are arguments that Muslims use to say Islam is peaceful, Islam is great, Islam gives women the rights before anything else, but taking it back to an actual factual thing from an Islamic perspective. So why do women inherit less than men? Why do women, their testimony is half that of a man? Why does Islam say there is no compulsion in religion? Like really kind of taking it down and breaking it down so that other people use it. Because I have seen people turn around and be like, oh, there's no compulsion in religion. And most people don't even know how to respond to it. They'll be like, oh, but you're going to, if the literal argument to that I have seen so many freaking times is, oh, but if there's no compulsion in religion, why is there a hellfire? It's like, no, you need to first understand where these Muslims are coming from, because most Muslims, I'm going to say 99% of Muslims are just mimicking what they're hearing in masjids or what they've else online. So taking these sort of things and deconstructing them and explaining them is a very important.
Can you give us an example for this one that you just brought up? Like, how would you respond to that? Like, if a Muslim says, "Well, what?"
For like there is no compulsion in religion,
right? So just to be clear to the audience, when you talk to Muslims and you say Islam is cruel and stuff, or whatever, it's forced on people, they say, no, look at the Quran. The Quran says, there's a verse in the Quran that says there's no compulsion in religion, so it's bullshit, Islam is not forced. So, so how would you respond to them?
Well, the first thing I turn around and tell them is, that's not the full ayat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Ayat means verse. Ayat means verse, by the way.
Ayat is verse.
Yeah.
So La ikraha fi din is literally like the first 4 or 5 letters, and then it continues on, and it's like La ikraha fi din qad tabayyana ar-rushd min al-ghay faman yakfur bit-taghut wa yu'min billah faqad istamsaka bil-'urwati al-wuthqa la infisama laha wallahu sami'un 'alim. Right? And it's like there is no compulsion in religion because the right path has been made clear from the wrong. And for those who have a most trustworthy handhold with Allah and they reject taghut, they're guided, and Allah is all-knowing and all-seeing. So that's just the first ayat. So straight away, like in that ayat, it's like I don't even have to continue on to the next ayat. Like it literally says in there's taghut. Now, if there is no compulsion in religion, how is there taghut? It doesn't make sense. Taghut is the Quranic sense is disbelief in Allah or anything like that. So I'm like, how can there be no compulsion if there is taghut? Like, just even taking that and really continuing on with those verses. And so with the next verse...
Taghut means disbelief in God? Because in Iran, they kept us... They make us feel like it's monarchy because there was such an anti-monarch stance from the Islamic Revolution.
In the Quranic sense, if you bear with me one moment, I shall pull it up on Google. Sheikh Google will tell us the answer to this question.
Iran has the Islamic Republic of Iran had the bias in making it out of the Quranic stuff.
So basically, taghut is belief or disbelief, is belief in anything else besides Allah, or no belief in Allah. Okay. That's what taghut is.
We were lied to, but okay.
As an example, continuing on with the next verse in the next ayats, it continues on with saying, that if you believe in Allah, then Allah, He will guide you and protect you. Translation in my head now. Allah has taken those who believe out of the darkness and into the light, and the taghut have taken those in the light into the darkness, and therein they will abide therein in the fire. And so it's like, well, if there is no compulsion in religion, why are people going to go in the fire? Which is a valid argument, but you can't just say that without providing the evidence of where it fucking says it in the Quran.
It's exactly what it is. Like, I think that what you just make this a lot more powerful. So the way that the two things I kind of handled when I wrote my book, the two things, one is this no compulsion thing, and I did exactly what you said, just throughout the next verse. And the same thing with the, in 533, where it says that, you kill one and it's like you've killed all of mankind, innocent life.
Yeah, we were talking about that before we went live, actually.
Yeah, and they skip... They always skip the part about except for he who spreads corruption in the land, and they never mention the next verse, the very next verse, which talks about crucifying them and drawing them. So I address that in my book, but when you do it with the full Arabic and you actually recite it the way that you do and you answer it, I think that is so powerful. It lends like there is an air of authenticity that comes with it that I think that
it's
would
actually
be, especially in a video,
pleasing to listen to. Like, it's nothing like those sheikhs reading the Quran is so horrific. When you read the Quran, I'm like, I want this on recording. I want to fall asleep to this.
That's why a woman's place is haram. Yeah, it's her aura.
Oh yeah, this is.
No, I think it's really.
Wait.
No,
what she's referring to is haram for women reciters of the Quran because it might be a little bit too pleasing. It's haram, but isn't the compulsion one also one issue with that is that Muhammad at that point, this is the Meccan verse, isn't it?
I believe so. Hang on. I haven't had a whole blog post about Mecca.
This is when Muhammad... Correct me.
Mecca versus nice and peaceful, and Medina versus are really violent and aggressive.
No, but this is when Muhammad wasn't in power yet, and this was if I remember correctly, this was in response to the when the Qurayshi people were telling him to cut the bullshit with Islam, and he was at that point. It's easy to say, like, you just have your religion, we have our religion. This is when you're a minority and you're weak.
Yeah.
But obviously, he showed Muslims, the Ummah, what to do when you're not weak, when you're not in power anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a. The way that I equated this verse, like this, let there be no compulsion, and then taking the next verse 257, along with it, the combination of it, it's sort of like telling your child, it's like, you have the freedom to marry whoever you want, but if you marry a Jew, I will kill you. Yeah. Like that's basically what it's like. That's the analogy I like to.
Actually, the way it is
a false choice.
It is given to Allah to do the punishment in these verses. But what I'm saying is that for people that don't pick Islam, according to Muhammad, when the Ummah is not in power, it's just leave it to Allah and He will just give them fire. That's fine. But when you are in power, now you have a responsibility to be part of the punishment on this world. I
think a very good example of that was when they had in Medina, were after one of the battles, and they had the captives. And Abu Bakr was like, don't kill them. And Umar was like, let's kill them. And then Muhammad was like, okay, well, he didn't kill them. And then it was revealed that he should have killed them. And it's like, that's because he was in a position of power, whereas previously it wasn't. Right. It's quite a really interesting topic, which is why I also want to touch on those sort of things, because like right now we understand what Mecca and Medina versus all that sort of stuff mean, but like to like the general Muslim or ex-Muslim or non-Muslim, they have no clue what the hell those terms mean. Right. Like a lot of people, like for example, one of the biggest things it frustrates me when I see this kind of this conversation happening is when people talk about Sharia, and I'm like, no one knows what they're fucking talking about in this conversation. Please stop talking about Sharia if you don't understand Sharia. Do you even know how it's made? Fuck off if you don't know how it's made, you know?
You know, the way you pronounce the ain in Sharia is how our Arabic teachers in Iran wanted us to pronounce it, and we never did.
You never could. So,
basically that's what I'm planning on doing with my channel but not just explaining, like, you know, we need what is a sahih hadith, what is a da'if hadith, what is an authentic hadith, what is a weak hadith, why shouldn't we use the weak hadith, what is a chain of narration, what is qisas, what is this, like that's what I want to talk about, because these things get brought up in a conversation so many times, and I want to be able to use my knowledge as someone who was raised in this to educate other ex-Muslims, so that when they do go out and have these conversations with Muslims, they at least kind of have an idea of what the hell they're talking about.
By the way, Nick, I want to say, and like, there's so much to talk about, but we have to wrap up really soon. But I want to say that, you know, when you say that you were raised in this, I think you should sell yourself a little bit better, because
you're too humble.
Every ex-Muslim was raised in it, right? But the thing is that you were actually educated very, very thoroughly in this.
And every time I tell her how awesome she is, she's like, yeah, maybe. I mean, it's not even a matter of. It's not even a matter of awesome. I think that no, I'm very serious about this. I'm not saying this as a joke or to make you feel good or anything. But I'm saying that when you actually put out your YouTube channel, because first of all, I think there's a huge void for exactly this kind of thing. I don't know I don't know any man, any woman, anybody who is doing this, who has this kind of depth of knowledge, and who's Abdullah Gondal, I think of, is very close, and what's his name? Hamid Abdul Samad, like he's another one. There are a few that I can think of, but nobody's really doing it to the extent that you are, in a way that is as user friendly as you are, like that's easy to read. So I think that when you talk about it, it shouldn't just be as, you know, I'm an ex-Muslim who's raised in Islam. I think it really should be somebody who memorized the Quran, who grew up educated by a sheikh, the daughter of a sheikh, all of that stuff. It really needs to come from that, because first of all of that stuff is true, and the second thing is that the depth of your knowledge and everything that you know really, really represents that as well. You're our ex-Muslim sheikh.
Yeah, so it's so important, I think, to present yourself that way too. Yeah. So,
by the way, can I just read something that you mentioned that I tweeted about in January? This is what I wrote, which goes exactly along the lines that you mentioned. This is what I said: as more people risk everything to abandon Islam, they leave no excuse for the rest of us. Fight against this barbaric ideology. We do not need reform. We do not need a different version of Islam. We can live without Islam. We should live without Islam. And this was along the line of what you were saying. You know, if so many people are in other countries are risking their lives, right, to say no to Islam, the people here that live in Canada, that live in the United States, that live in Australia, that we live with some level of safety and security, we shouldn't be like, well, what about maybe we could take some parts of the Quran seriously and keep, just get rid of the bad parts. Maybe we could read it. No, fuck this book and fuck all the barbaric nonsense that's in it. There is no need for anybody to make any excuses for this book. No other book would have survived this long with this Sharia, with this amount of barbarism in it, unless it was sold under the label of religion. It's religion that makes these things survive. We shouldn't be making excuses for it.
Yeah. Well, see, that's my thing. I am unashamedly an ex-Muslim. It's part of who I am. Like, I'm many things, but being an ex-Muslim is a part of who I am, as being a Muslim was part of my life for such a long time. And so when I don't turn around and say that if you're an ex-Muslim in Australia or Canada or a Western country, that you should speak up. Like, if that's on your prerogative. No one needs to force you to do that. However, if you are on a platform and you are speaking up, don't negate those experiences. Don't make people feel less of a person or anything like that, and placate you. Because I'm not ashamed to be an ex-Muslim. I'm not ashamed of it. I am an ex-Muslim, and I'll say it. I tell people I'm an ex-Muslim. I've always said that. Before I even knew what the term ex-Muslim was, when somebody asked me, I'm like, yeah, I was a Muslim, now I'm not. It's never something I've been ashamed of. And if you're wanting to reform Islam to placate to other people, are you ashamed of being an ex-Muslim? That's my question I want to ask. Are you ashamed of being an ex-Muslim? Because if you are, don't call yourself one. It's really fucking simple.
Amen. Okay, so
some people in the live chat are asking, are you on Facebook? Should people reach you on Facebook or no? Just Twitter? I
have a Twitter. I have an Instagram. I'm a millennial. I have all of these things.
Yeah, but is it okay? Because
I have a Facebook. It's same thing. It's Nik J Gray. If you want to, you can follow me, you can message me, you can add me, but I'm terrible at the Facebook, so I'll add you back if I want to add you back. If I'll Facebook stalk you and be like, nah, I'm joking. No, but follow me on there. I also have a Tumblr. You can follow my Tumblr too. Like I told you, I'm a millennial. Duh.
Yeah, everything. And we're going to put links for all of this stuff. Nick, I'll write to you later on, and then I'll get everything that we need. We're going to put links for everything
to the public.
We want to make sure that everybody in the public can access all of this amazing stuff that Nick is going to start doing, and they can reach her and they can follow her wherever she can. So that's
one person was suggesting that maybe you should join the secular jihadists. I think she's too advanced for us. She's going to make us look like idiots.
I am too busy. I am working with launching a public group, an ex-Muslim group in Australia. I run Heretics Corner, the Nullifidian. I've got so much on my plate. I'm like,
yeah. Are you? You guys have the conference there, and it's. I really, really like all of the ex-Muslims that are speaking out in Australia, because all of them have such unique voices. Zara and Harris. Yeah. Those guys. There's the other people there was another person who was there, and I can't remember her name. I don't know if she was Bangladeshi or whatever, but
Sabina?
Sorry?
Sabina. Yes, Sabina.
Yeah, there's so many, and I think that there's some really powerful voices. Yeah, I think there's a lot of great stuff happening over there. So I think it's fantastic.
The ex-Muslim community in Australia is very grassroots at the moment. It's very tiny. Tiny.
We need that. That's what we need. That's when they were the best. When you had the. Sorry.
But that's good.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Hold on, Nick. There was a connection issue. I didn't mean to actually, but you were saying something that
I just said that the ex-Muslim group the ex-Muslims in Australia is a very grassroots kind of thing. It's in its baby stages right now.
Well, I think that's why it's so inspiring, because I know that when people started out and they find other people and they're the first people to start out. I remember that phase, and I remember how exciting it was. And then later on. The reformers come in, and
but thank you so much.
I love you, reformers.
But thank you so much for given that it is grassroots. That means that we need people like you even more. Thank you so much for doing everything. I mean, you have a life. You have a job, but you still take time out of your free time to you could be doing other stuff, right? You could be having fun.
What?
Yeah.
I don't have friends. I was raised in a cult.
Right. but thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you for doing everything. And a lot of people in the live chat are looking forward to your YouTube channel. So many people ask, where is your YouTube channel? We're looking forward to your videos. And again,
I have one video up on there. So if you were wanting to know what I spoke about at last year's conference, that's more in depth of my story, I guess you could say. That's the only video that's on there at the moment.
Right. No, but
Heretical Grey.
Yeah, but we look forward to future videos on your channel. I'm going to go subscribe right after this.
Yeah. I'm doing it right now.
Well, thank you.
All right. So, thank you, people in the live chat. Ali, did I interrupt you? So I think I did a lot this time.
No.
Sorry, I know.
Me?
Yeah. Sorry. If,
I think it was okay. It wasn't that bad.
And I think I'm going to get messages from our Patreon telling me that I interrupted this time a lot, but this was too exciting.
It's fine.
This was so exciting.
I did too.
I couldn't stop
I'm interrupting you now, actually.
It's okay. I love you. That's fine.
Yeah, I know. I love you too. So you're live in 29 hours. You're doing something in 29 hours, it seems.
Yes, I'm doing my first live show. So
first live show, Heretical Grade, 29 hours. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So
don't miss it.
Yeah, if you're interested, you can send me questions on the Twitter. I'll answer them.
Sweet. Sounds good.
All right.
Yeah, I just became your 63rd subscriber, and that's a very important number. You know why?
Yay! Why?
Because 63 was the age at which the Prophet Muhammad died. That's when he went to heaven.
Wasn't it
63?
Yeah.
Huh?
It was 62 because Abu Bakr died. Abu Bakr became the Khalifa at 60, and then he died 2 years later at 62, the same age as Muhammad.
Okay, here's the thing. I think because when he when he consummated with Aisha, he was 53. Right? And Aisha died, he died when Aisha was 18. So that was 9 years later. So 53 plus 9 is 62. But since we're talking about like the Hijri calendar versus Gregorian and everything, I think that there's a range.
God, we're nerding it out on Islam. Okay.
Yeah.
We're
totally geeking out on Islam. This is amazing. It's so much fun.
All right.
I've been looking for this for a long time.
Thank you, everybody.
But anyway.
Thank you, everyone in live chat. Uday, the Rational Guard, Mike, Mars. Mike is saying, live long and prosper. Thank you, Mike. Hazem, love you all. Sorry if I missed anybody. Oh, wait. So there's somebody at the top. What was it? Oh, yeah. Reason on Faith.
Reason on Faith.
Yes. Don't forget Reason on Faith. All right. Love you all and see you again soon. Bye, guys.
The secular jihadists have been made possible thanks to the Illuminati and the covert support of Israel and the CIA. That's what we have been told, but we haven't received our checks yet. If you like what we do, please support us. Share the podcast with your friends. Write and tweet us with topic and guest suggestions. Or head over to secularjihadist.com and give $1 or more for exclusive access to live video. Have your questions read and answered on the air and more. Till next time, may the flying spaghetti monster be with you.